Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 5 p.m. on December 13th, 2022. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Hayden City Council. Could I ask for a roll call of council members, please?
Council President Roeder?
Yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Here.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
And Councilmember Satterfield is absent. We do have a quorum.
Mr. DePriest, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we have two corrections to the agenda this evening. First of all, we had intended to have a hearing tonight for the Kerr zone map amendment and Trail Creek subdivision public hearing. However, the local newspaper was unable to get it printed in time, so that hearing has been rescheduled for January 10th. If any of you are here strictly for that, we won't be talking about it tonight.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
it's not on here.
That's correct.
Okay.
But it had originally been scheduled.
Okay.
I don't see anybody running for the door, so I assume that many of you are not here for that reason tonight. Okay. The other thing is, the correction that we have is, I would like a motion to approve the amended agenda, adding item 3F, which is the update on the Ramsey Road projects, to the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Council President Roeder?
Yes.
And Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
Well, thank you. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, the city of Hayden does business 9 hours a day, 5 days a week. Many of those things are done strictly administratively. However, some of the things that the city does has to be approved by the city council. They have to, that agreement is what's called a consent. And tonight on our consent calendar, if any of you have it there, I'd like to go over that now. On the consent calendar, item 1A, approval of the Shaporta and Fendage land acquisition documents for the Ramsey Road Extension Project. 1B, approval of the 2022 annual road and street financial report. 1C, approval of the commissioners' reappointments. 1D, approval of the Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board wastewater treatment plant facility upgrades and payment requests. 1E, authorization to approve the greater rental agreement with Western States Equipment. 1F, approval of the greater rental agreement with Prime Time Construction. 1G, approval of consultant services agreement with Geotech Inc. for the City Hall remodeling. 1H, approval of the Black Wolf Meadows final plat. 1I, approval of PZE 22-046 Madison Capital Zone Map Amendment written decision. 1J, approval of PZE 22-076 Madison Ranch subdivision written decision. 1K, approval of PZE 22-0125 Bingham Zone Map Amendment written decision. 1L, the ratification of the November payroll. 1M, ratification of bills paid on 12/7/22. And 1N, approval of bills for payment. Is there any discussion or questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember White.
Yep.
I missed something. I missed the additions or corrections.
Okay. The first correction is for the Kerr zone map amendment and the Trail Creek subdivision public hearing, which we will not be having tonight
Okay.
because it did not get published in time in the press. And the second is the motion to approve the amended agenda, adding item 3F, the update on the Ramsey Road projects.
Because I wanted to add a correction.
Okay,
I'm sorry. I missed that part where I could put that in.
okay.
Okay. I would move to table agenda item 4D, the minor change to conditions of approval for PZE 201012 until a later date, as I believe this needs further study.
Do we have a second?
If I may ask, what is it that you'd like to see?
Yeah.
Yeah, what is it that's not in the report? I'm curious.
Yes, I would like to look further into the original documents of when it was first, I did pull up the meeting minutes from when it was first approved in 2020, and I would like to study it more, ask more questions about the implications. I don't know if there's some legal implications. It was passed during a public hearing, and I was wonder if there's legal implications that we need a public hearing again.
Are those
Concerns.
questions, could they be asked tonight? So we could resolve that? I mean, we have legal counsel here and,
That was my question.
yeah. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if we could postpone it to the next meeting and be able to research it some more.
Councilmember DePreez.
Yeah, I would ask that we to have a discussion here tonight to kind of get an idea of what's happening. And then if after the discussion, we feel that, yeah, this needs to be looked into more, we can always table it or what have you. But I think I'd kind of like to at least initiate the discussion to see what the concerns are.
I too had some, questions which I'd like to discuss tonight and,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. I withdraw my motion, then we can
Withdraw it.
discuss it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember DePreez for items on the consent calendar.
Sure, thank you. Mr. Soderling, I guess, regarding item A, Ramsey Road Extension right-of-way purchase, again, just to reiterate, I guess, to make sure that this funding is all grant or impact fee funding, correct?
This is part of the federal aid grant that we have, and so it will be proportion based on that grant agreement, which is roughly 93% grant, 7% city funds, and those come out of the impact
The
fees.
city is impacted, so there is no general or other city fund that's using this. Okay? And the other item I have, I guess, looks like it's E and F regarding the graders. And I guess just for informational, what is our grader situation? I mean, do we own any or do we lease them all? Or, and, $7,200 for every 4 weeks. How many weeks do we project needing them? I know the season can go, who knows, but kind of what's the general projection? And there's two different, there's prime time and Western States.
Okay.
Can you kind of just educate us on that
Yeah.
issue?
So we own 2 graders. We typically use 4 graders in the wintertime. So we typically rent 4 graders. Usually it's from about mid-November to mid-March. And so these would be 2 graders we'd rent. The, excuse me. We don't really need to own 4 graders per se. A grader purchase is could be as high as $300,000. We don't, our year-round use is very, very limited. So our biggest use is in those months that we're plowing. So it's much more cost-effective to rent, even though it seems high. It's a pretty good rental rate, actually, for a grader. Most grader rental rates are $15,000 to $18,000 a month.
And our people operate them?
Yeah.
Okay. And what else?
And so the reason we have 2 is because we're having a hard time getting them. We were able to find 1 grader from Prime Time at $5,000 a month, which is an awesome rate. And we're hoping, we haven't got it yet, that we're going to get one from Western States. And the reason that's in here is because our next meeting is not until the middle of October. January, excuse me. Yeah, I got way back there.
Forward.
Take a break. Oh,
And we would like to be able to move forward with that agreement should it become available before that time.
Okay, and this is all budgeted anyway, this is expected, it's all in there?
Yeah, I think we budgeted 6,000 a month, so it's close.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Other questions of,
just if I may, a follow-up on that. The 6,000 a month, is that so many hours or is that for the full month as much as we have to use it?
It's per month, it sits on our property
So,
to be
okay.
used at any time.
Okay, thank you.
It does have, if we get the Western States one, it does have a max hour, but we're never even anywhere near that, so.
Thank you.
Councilmember White?
Yes, everything on the agenda is fine. On the consent calendar, I talked to different people about the things involved. Just to note that items I, J, and K, the zone map amendments, I will be voting no on those tonight, based on my votes on those in a previous meeting. But the rest of the calendar, I'll be voting yes on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions? Council President Roder?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Sandy Reuter, our city treasurer, your name is on this memo on item 1B. It's the approval of the annual road and street financial report.
Yes, sir.
I note in that, Sandy, that our reserve fund for the end of the year was $1,600,000, where we have $46 million in future projects, future capital improvement projects to put that towards. I also noted that we spend a lot of money on roads and streets. This year we spent $3,600,000 on new construction, reconstruction, maintenance equipment. One of the things that I heard a lot during the recent ballot levy on law enforcement was that many folks said that we've got a huge budget in roads and streets. Why don't we take some of the money out of that and put it towards law enforcement? How much of this could we put towards other issues such as law enforcement?
None. We are required by Idaho code to spend highway money on road and street projects.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions on the consent calendar? All right, we will move on. Our next section of the meeting tonight is our visitor.
You need to vote on it.
You need to vote.
You need to vote.
Oh, thank you very much. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I'll make that motion that we approve the consent calendar as stated, items A through N.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White?
I'm voting no on I, J, and K, and yes on the rest.
It's
The
in
motion
its,
was for, thank you, go ahead. Sorry, for the record, I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
No.
And Councilmember DePreez?
Yes.
And Council President Roder?
Yes.
Motion passes. Now, let's move on to the second session of our meeting tonight, public comment. We have received no request for public comment up front here. If anyone would care to have a public comment tonight, this would be the time to do it. Okay, nobody's running to the back of the room, so we'll move on to our next section. Unfinished business. Our first item of unfinished business is the Bingham Zone Map Amendment Ordinance. The Bingham Zone Map Amendment and Ordinance is in response to a hearing that we held on November 22nd, ladies and gentlemen. On November 22nd, the council voted to approve a change in zone from residential R1 to mixed residential. The address of the property is at 235 East Hayden Avenue. Does anyone have any questions, comments about the Bingham Zone Map Amendment Ordinance?
What I remember from it is that there was a abandoned building. It was dilapidated, and
I believe it was characterized as a drug house.
there you go. Yeah. So in other words, it was a building that should be razed, sounds like, and the owner wanted to put in a duplex where one side of the duplex would be inhabited by a daughter and their family. So it seemed like a really good thing for a family to work out. And so this allows for that property to then be rezoned to allow for those two buildings on the new rezone change. So I'm for this. It's good for the family. This is not it's going to change a little bit the population of Hayden, but not too much.
Was it, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir. Mr. DePriest.
Was it two buildings or one duplex?
Well, I mean, it was the original building that the owners will live in, and then they're going to build this duplex.
Right.
So there'll be two buildings
Right.
on the total rezone.
Right, and they're going to demolish the one.
Right.
Right, okay.
Other questions or comments? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve the Bingham Zone Map Amendment Ordinance?
You actually need the motion.
Okay, thank you. I would like a motion to read the ordinance by title only, to suspend the rule of reading in full on 3 separate dates, and to approve the first reading.
So moved.
Second?
I have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White?
No.
This is a motion to suspend the rule of reading on 3 separate days.
Okay, yes.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
And Councilmember Roder?
Yes.
This is the ordinance. An ordinance in the city of Hayden, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for change in zoning classification for the lands described in section 1 of this ordinance from single-family residential to mixed residential, providing for amendment of the official zoning map to reflect those changes, providing that all prior zones applicable to the lands described in section 1 are hereby superseded, providing severability and providing an effective date.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'm sorry,
Are you asking for a motion?
I will in a moment.
Oh, okay, sorry. Head of the game.
I would appreciate a motion that the ordinance be adopted on having passed its first reading by title only, and that it be published by summary, incorporating the title as the core of the summary upon passage.
I'm up. Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we would approve PZE 22-0125 Bingham Zone Map Amendment Ordinance.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or comment? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White?
No.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yes.
And Council President Roder?
Yes.
Passed. Item number 3B, Madison Capital Zone Development Agreement Draft. Ladies and gentlemen, on October 25th, 2022, the city held a public hearing regarding this. And Donna, do you have some background information for us? Well, I should say that you probably are going to tell them that. Go ahead.
So, zone map amendments are with like the Bingham zone map amendment that came forward, go through 2 public hearings, one with Planning and Zoning Commission and one with City Council. If no conditions are attached to that zone map amendment request, then you have a written decision that's in the consent calendar, like you have a couple tonight. And then in unfinished business, you have an ordinance that enacts that zone map amendment change. In the case of the Madison Capital LLC, the zone map amendment came with some conditions to the approval. So as part of those conditions, a requirement of a zoning development agreement between the city and the applicant is required. And so that's an agreement between two parties. Scott Kurtz is here, and he did provide some, he received the zoning development agreement draft at the same time that the council did. And what staff tried to do was encapsulate in the zoning development agreement that you have most of what you deliberated upon as part of that process. So with that said, we did receive comments back about 3 parts in the zoning development agreement that you guys have before you. The first one was in relationship to section 2C, which said that the design of the mixed-use building shall include no more than 50% of each building as 3 stories to accommodate the live-to-work dwelling unit design. However, a minimum of 8 units must be provided in total of the project. The remainder of the building structure shall be 2 stories in height. So their comment back was that they understand that this relates to the importance of providing a more appealing aesthetic with different elevations, particularly as viewed off of Hayden Avenue. We would propose that to satisfy this aesthetic, applicant agrees to the 50% requirement as it relates to the buildings directly adjacent to Hayden Avenue to the north, but not to building behind those structures and adjacent to Dunkirk. So 50% adjacent to Hayden and 25% of all structures. And further, we would like to clarify that the 50% requirement applies across different building heights within any single building. An example, the builder is not required to have different roof lines within a single structure. And I'm going to let Scott come back up here and talk to these, but I just wanted to have you see his comments back, and I'll kind of succeed the floor to him. I do have the agreement in Word if we want to go in and morph the conditions here tonight as well. So the second section that he had concerns about was the section relating to permitting and certificate of occupancy. They note that there are 2 references to approvals from outside agencies with a number of different agencies listed thereafter. They'd like to confirm that the intent is for the city to reach out to these agencies for comment and not approval. They didn't believe that any of these agencies have authority to approve projects and is outside their scope, but we would like to address that in the final zoning development agreement language. So just as a staff response to that, permits are required to have sign-offs. All permits are required to have sign-off from various outside agencies. These sign-offs may include comments, they may include conditions of approval, or they may just have an approval. So, and those are from a variety of agencies to include the Hayden Lake Irrigation District in this case, or a water purveyor, Panhandle Health District, Northern Lakes Fire Protection District, and then if there are any water main or sewer main extensions as part of the project, those require approval of the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. The only agency that's kind of listed in this is that in order to address Council President Roeder's concern is that we also added in here a comment, possible comment from the Kootenai County Aquifer Protection Group, and we would send them a request to comment on this proposal. And then certificates of occupancy are issued once the conditions of approval have been met and final inspections have been completed as they're required. So that's kind of the gist of how those two items were identified in your agreement.
Donna, can I ask a question? When you ask for comments from those agencies, do you ask any specific questions, or do you just ask for their comments?
They have to take their building plans and their project plans to those various agencies and get an initial that they have a review of them. And then before we issue the building permit, they have to let us know if they have any conditions that need to be met in order to meet their requirements for those entities that are listed.
But we as a city are not asking that any specific agency a specific question concerning that project. It's up to that agency to look at it from their jurisdiction.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
And I should note that all of those that are listed here a water purveyor, Panhandle Health District, the fire department, and DEQ. Those are required of all non-residential building permits and all multifamily building structures. Those are not any different. The only nuanced difference to the conditions of approval that you have is the Kootenai County Aquifer Protection folks, which we will ask them to comment, as Council President Roeder had identified in his deliberations. I do not know that they will comment, but we will ask. Based on those conditions, if you leave them as is. And then section 2E states that in no case may the total square footage of commercial within 2C and 2D above be less than 10% of the ground floor footprint of the mixed-use buildings. The applicant wants to clarify whether or not that 10% requirement applies to the conditioned or livable first floor spaces across the entire mixed-use development or the actual footprint. And 1128C2 identifies, that's our Hayden City Code, says for those properties within 300 feet of an existing signalized intersection or future intersection, which is identified as a controlled intersection, which this property does, a minimum of 10% of the project's ground floor area must be developed and maintained as a commercial use. So it doesn't distinguish between conditioned or unconditioned. Yes.
This is where I was somewhat confused, I think, the time before. The individual buildings, I believe 5 or 6 of them with 5 or 6 different units in each one, whatever it was. That's the living space, correct? And as I was reading this, 10% of each of those buildings needs to be commercial. But then I thought that it was explained that, in fact, that square footage would apply to the separate commercial building.
Correct. So
am I reading that correctly, or?
Right. So the way that the code was written is that the 10% ground floor area could be within the buildings, or it could be separate from the buildings, or it could be a combination of in the buildings and separate from the buildings.
As long as there's the combination of the two meets whatever 10% of the livable space is.
10% of what it says as ground floor area.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Thank you.
So those are the only 3 areas that the applicant identified that they had concerns with the zoning development agreement as proposed that you have in your packets. And I can bring it up in Word if you want to do that, but it's up to you. Just staff's, again, looking for direction.
I have help me with something, please. Maybe I'm getting the cart before the horse, but the city would respond, or Harbs would respond to sewer connectivity. In other words, we provide a will serve letter to the applicant. Have we done that?
As part of their subdivision, yes.
Okay, so my question is that there's no guarantee from that will serve letter that when the building permits are taken out for construction, that there is capacity for those structures. Is that true or false?
Relatively true, I guess.
I believe that the will serve letter states that the city does not guarantee that we will have capacity at the time that the applicant applies.
Right. Okay, I got that right. So then this leads to the next question, and I sit on the Harbs board, as does Roger. I'm the alternate, but I get to participate and not vote. And I'm looking at our most current agenda for Thursday. And every month they give a report, or Ken Windrum, the director of the Harbs, it's the Hayden Area Regional Sewer Board that services the city. It says that the city's November report on sewer connection, they assigned 6 WUs, wastewater units. Harbs has 6,893 wastewater units assigned, or, and this is the critical part, it says, or 1,148 residential connections available. So the treatment plant has 1,148 residential connections available, according to the statement here. we have one subdivision which is going to be phased, which is Hayden Canyon, that will have 1,500 homes. My question is, how are we going to service all these other housing developments for sewer? I know we have it out. We can say, for now we have service, but we can't guarantee. But again, just one development is Hayden Canyon, 1,500 units, but we have several housing developments that are in process right now.
We don't, I mean, Hayden Canyons is not building 1,500 units today.
I understand.
And so, and they will not develop 1,500 units today. So,
And I'll add, when, in the latest phases, there's a portion of the upgrade that's attributed to expansion of the system. It's not all done. The estimate that they gave us to expand the system by another 400,000 gallons per day was just under $1 million to put the additional infrastructure in. So they put in additional clarifier, they put in some headworks, they put in some other parts of this that they paid for out of cap fees or expansion dollars while they were in there. And when the need, as the need gets close, then they are supposed to engage and build that additional capacity. And it's over 2,000 ERs. If you look at 400,000 additional gallons to the capacity, daily capacity. The other was looking at the daily use in the future. So there's a couple ways we're looking at seeing the capacity increased at the plant.
Councilmember DePriest.
Thank you. So if I'm understanding this, it sounds like we have, what were the number of available units they have?
1,148 residential connections
Okay,
available.
and we have the 1,500 projected future, and we have other developments around that if at the point in time, a lot of these phases come to the point where we've utilized all of these. At that point in time, the city has in their documentation that if it is not available at that time, that you cannot proceed until they do have the available. So whatever the situation down the road, if it were to come about, that when whoever went to develop and the capacity was not there, we would be protected and able to say, hey, listen, we told you, this is.
yes, and the city sits on that board and has basic control on how that system is managed. Has a seat at that table. And I would think that they would be looking at master planning just like the city does for their sewer and road system.
But my primary concern with this issue is that we're protected, that they can't come back and say, hey, wait a minute, you approved this and now we want to build and you're saying we can't. But we have covered ourselves that if the case were to be that we don't have availability at the time, we would have to wait.
I believe that's the intent of that statement in the Will Serve letter.
Yeah.
And Mayor, the only reason I bring that up is because with growth, which we have, I wanted to identify what we currently have as a concern for the future. That's my reason for bringing it up.
Yeah. Good point. Councilmember White.
Yes, I had a question about the 10% of the ground floor footprint for mixed-use buildings. So that doesn't mean that every home has to have a business in it? No. So some of them are just homes and some of them are business?
That's correct.
So would it be in the rental agreement or the homeownership agreement that which ones are designated to be commercial and which ones are not? How's that determined? Is that determined by an HOA or by?
Their application, when they turn in their project, will identify which units they're going to have for residential only and which units they're going to have live to work opportunities in. So it'll be part of their entire project site when they submit it, that we'll review when we do their mixed use design assessment or review of their mixed use design standards to make sure they've met those standards of approval.
Okay, so for the homes, would it be limited to only the bottom floors having business, or could it be anywhere? in
They
the-
haven't requested to have them anywhere other than in the first floor.
Okay, just, thank you.
Donna, does the information you have in blue there, does that answer the applicant's question? Maybe I should ask Mr. Kurtz that. Does that provide the clarity that you're looking for?
I think on the last two questions it does. I think with regards to the building heights, I don't think there was any.
There wasn't.
It's not a defined term. There's no real response. It's just a sort of clarification.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or concerns? Go ahead, Councilmember White.
Were we also going to include any kind of green space or parks in this agreement?
In the applicants, in the, it's just, I don't have the thing in front of me. Hold that thought. Let me pull that up. So the subdivision itself, or the mixed use piece to the north, doesn't have a requirement to have park per se, but the Hayden Avenue has a greenway space along Hayden Avenue as identified in both the 2040 Park Strategic Plan and more specifically the 2040 Transportation Plan. And so they would be able to utilize that multimodal path that has greenway on both sides of it within the front area along Hayden Avenue. And they wouldn't have to keep it necessarily parallel to Hayden Avenue. They could do a little bit of wandering on their site to make that work, depending on how they integrate it into their site, which is part of the Park Strategic Plan for parks.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember DePriest.
Thank you. With regard to number 2, application design and construction, A transportation impact analysis for the entire site shall be required to address both the commercial and residential impacts of the site and shall include intersections of Ramsey Road and Hayden Avenue, Atlas Road and Hayden Avenue, Hutter Road and Hayden Avenue, as well as others as may be determined during the analysis, and possible additional mitigation required for the project site. Am I to take it that that is acceptable to the applicant? And then to further go on, I guess, number 1, who selects the company doing the traffic analysis? The applicant or the city?
So the applicant can choose to have a traffic consultant do it, and whoever their traffic consultant does it, they provide that information to the city, and then the city sends it to our traffic consultant to review it to make sure that that they agree with the assumptions that were made. Rob and Ellen are here and they can chime in if I'm mistaken. Or if the applicant wishes, they can have our traffic consultant do the analysis and pay those costs of that analysis as pass-through. If they have their own traffic consultant do it and then our traffic consultant reviews it, they have to pay for our traffic consultant's time as well.
Okay. Kind of jumping around here, Mike. Looking at the master traffic plan and noting rating of vehicle capacity and current and future volume, there's it seems to me, if I remember correctly, those intersections are already at stress levels to some degree or another. What if it shows, what if the study shows that there are issues? Can conditions of initiation of development be that road capacity be increased to meet demands before development commences? Like if they say, yeah, this is going to increase traffic to the point where the rating is going to be unacceptable, as part of this agreement, can we say, well, we need to see the capacity available before you initiate development?
What'll happen during the traffic analysis process is that the expert will offer the mitigation solutions. So if there's an issue identified at any of those intersections, they will offer the mitigation solutions, which will then go to our expert for review and consideration. But it's not a condition that I would advise putting in this agreement at this stage under a hypothetical conversation.
I understand exactly what you're saying there. And maybe I'm not understanding the complete process here when you talk about final approval. So let's say we all agree on this development agreement, and yet they have not had the traffic analysis. No initiation can occur until this is all approved and settled? Or could it occur, initiation begin, and it comes back and says, hey, wait a minute, we have an issue here?
The transportation analysis is part of the application process. So the analysis has to occur as part of the application. And so they can't get to an approval to move forward until we've figured out what the heck they have to do.
Okay, that's good, thank you. That's straight, yeah.
I have a follow-up. Ed, you went right to where I was going to go, and I appreciate that. My question then is, when the analysis is done, the traffic analysis is done, I'm hearing that the experts look at or develop it. And, at what part do we look at that, or do we not? Are we not able to see the before and after effect, or the current grading of the intersections, and then what impact would this development have on those? I mean, that's something that, in whose control will they say, well, that's okay, or no, that's okay? I mean, do we have a definitive grade that the city will not allow more traffic on that intersection? Like, for example, if we have an F grade on one going east on one of these intersections, what do we do? Do we just say that's okay?
Alan, do you want to comment on graded intersections?
I think our legal counsel answered that they have to offer up a solution to mitigate it.
And your transportation plan outlines your process for maintaining or improving the grades at those intersections.
The existing grades are in the transportation.
All right, well, my concern is we have a lot of overloading of our intersections because of all the growth. So at what point in time do we say somebody has to fix it? And if we don't have the money to fix it, do we just keep building?
Well, these mitigation fixes that are proposed here would ostensibly be borne by the developers.
Can I chime in here a bit?
Pardon?
May I chime in?
Please do.
Okay. Again, one of my concerns, and I think it's going along the same topic here, as I looked at things, there are almost $10 million in future projects for Hayden Avenue between Hutter and Atlas and Ramsey. And I'm assuming the traffic coming out of this development will be on Hayden Avenue there. And if these mitigation and requirements would involve those projects, those $10 million in planned required projects, how does that fit into the whole picture, if I'm making sense, I guess?
If the projects are in our impact fee analysis
In your capital improvement plan.
and the capital improvement plan, and their impacts are not extraordinary, or in other words, not above the anticipated, then their impact fees are actually funding those improvements.
But they may not occur for several years down the road as the CIP shows. I mean, if you understand, to me,
The improvements may not occur for several years. Is that,
I think, because my picture of this, I'm trying to visualize this whole thing is, okay, anybody who's driven Hayden Avenue, especially in peak hours lately, understands the experience. And let's say they come back and say, yeah, this is just going to increase it. But are we going to have to wait until we get to the point in time on the CIP where impact fees can pay for this and just deal with it as far as the increases until we get to that point?
okay. So we've got all these what if scenarios, and makes it very difficult to.
But this is precisely the reason why the code allows for impact fees to be held for 8 and 11 years, so that you can identify and outline these projects as the need becomes more critical under your capital improvement plan.
I understand that, but, it's just I think the realities that I see of it are, and it's happening, in my opinion, all around, is there's a lot of stress being applied. And in general, it's, yeah, we have it planned, you're just gonna have to live with it till we get there. And the more and more this happens, the more and more stress it is on the roads and the people. And I'm just kind of curious if I'm understanding this correctly, that basically the improvements are planned, and the bottom line is, yeah, you're just gonna have to live with it until we eventually get there. Is that somewhat of a crude interpretation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're planned in our master plan based on a projected growth, which is at the moment more aggressive than what we're seeing, which means that the master plan should be showing those things, needing those improvements before they're probably going to happen, which also means, though, the funding will probably lag because the growth also is part of the funding mechanism. So, but the projects will happen, yes, when the funding is available and based on priorities and other opportunities that drive priorities, right? I mean, just, again, we have projects are going to probably get moved up because there's something else driving the priority, right? And so it's hard for me to speculate on exactly how those projects are going to come to fruition and when there's so many variables that are going to take place in, over the next 5 years to make those projections. But the intent of the funding that we have, which is that it funds the deficiency. The problem is, and as you know, much of the growth over the last 20 years, which includes many of the people in the room today, may have not paid for those things, and that may be part where the deficiency is, and eventually the city has to find that shortfall to make those things happen.
Right. And I understand, again, and not to be argumentative. Yeah, it does, but I'm not to really, I know it sounds that, I'm not trying to be argumentative.
I'm just trying to be honest with you.
I agree. I'm just living by what I see as the reality of, we do have funding concerns and priority and all that in effect, we might say, okay, you're good to go. You build it, and that it may be several years before we get to be able to make those mitigate those conditions, and we just have to live with it, deal with it until we get to that point. If you, you know what I mean? Hey, yeah, it's there, the situation, but when I say live with it and deal with it, it's just, that's what I'm saying, is, what are you going to do about it, basically? Until the situation allows it?
The comment?
Yeah.
Council
thank you,
President Mayor.
What I was hoping is, I'm a little reluctant to move forward on something that I'm not sure of. And what I'm not sure of is, what are those intersections like graded now? I'd like to see those. I'd like to know if one is one direction and the intersection is an F, or two is an F, which is the fail, because I know they're rated under an alpha designation. But we know that there's issues out there, there's problems. I'd like to know what they are right now, because what we're doing is we are now making it, we're overloading that even more. I don't think that I need to see a study right now to know what they're graded right now, because those are graded. So I'm not real comfortable with moving forward until I see what they're graded at right now. Because, again, the biggest complaint I hear from people about the growth is the traffic. And I'm not blaming anybody, because it's a function of the growth and the people moving here and that, but I would really like to know, because that grading also becomes a safety issue. And then our mission statement of our comp plan is concern of the health, safety, and welfare of our community. If we overload those intersections, I know that this was years ago, but Ramsey and Hayden Avenue, I knew the girl that ran that intersection and killed somebody. That was 30 years ago. And so the traffic wasn't that bad then. So that's a concern I have, Mayor, is I want to be smart about what we do. And I'd like to know where we're at with those intersections right now.
Other comments? Councilmember White?
Yes, I too am concerned about the traffic on Hayden and the density. I have a hard time picturing 30 condos plus commercial on that property, even though we saw a plan. But could part of this agreement be lowering the number of dwelling units in there too? 20, something like that, just to lower the density that's there on Hayden. Also, I would like to know more about what parking is available, how many parking spaces.
Mr. Mayor, can I interject here?
Yes, ma'am.
Wanda, can you weigh in here? Please?
You've already approved a preliminary plat. This zoning development agreement is just in relationship to the designation of this particular zone, which you also have already approved. And so this isn't an opportunity to go backwards and undo what you've already approved through the public hearing process. The staff, I think, did a remarkable job of unpacking your deliberations from the lengthy deliberations from 2 different meetings over this project and building a zoning development agreement with this applicant that, quite frankly, it's impressive. They only had concerns with 3 aspects of this. So if you want to make, the goal here right now is to offer suggestions with regards to the words of the zoning development agreement to staff so that they can make sure that it articulates what your decision is going to be. If your decision is to delay the implementation of the zoning development agreement to put more requirements on the applicant for something that you've already approved, that's a different conversation. So I think the options in front of you are to table the zoning development agreement and give staff more direction on going back and drafting different aspects of it, if that's what you're trying to accomplish with these lines of questions. But that's, the zoning development agreement is just the final step of something you've already approved.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yeah, I guess if I can, because the density has always been something that I've been really focused on. And as I looked at this one, you know, the condos and the single family homes, we're still at 4 dwelling units per acre, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? With the exception of rural, but suburban rural, whatever that one is, which are half-acre lots, 4 dwelling units per acre is about as low as you're going to go, unless you tell the people you can't build on it, and which I believe we don't have that right to do. I think I know the number 30. You're thinking that, but at 4 dwelling units per acre. I'm fine with that. I agree with Fonda. I think right now my sticking point and area of most concern is the traffic and the analysis and the mitigation of it, how we can ensure that we cause the least congestion and trouble and frustration to the people who drive that road frequently. So I don't know if we can change the wording or how we can do this to ensure, but again, as I think about it, this can't go forward until they present a plan. What did you say? I didn't write it down about.
Part of the application, they have to have the traffic impact analysis.
Right.
And potential mitigations identified.
So we're just in the application process right now. So this traffic issue should be settled for lack of a better term, prior to, the application being approved.
Correct.
Correct, okay, thank you.
So follow up on the traffic thing, and it's under the paragraph 2, application design and construction, and again, it's paragraph A underneath 2. And it says that possible additional mitigation required of the project site. Who determines?
Yeah, the experts. That's the whole point of the traffic impact analysis experts. So either, as Donna indicated, the applicant chooses to use the city's expert.
Using what criteria, though, do they get to determine whether that's a good, see, I mean, that's where I'm concerned about. What's,
The mitigation?
yeah, who decides, they say the expert decides, they're not here driving the roads. I know that they're going to look at traffic counts, but what if all the or each direction of an intersection is F? Is that okay? I mean, that's my question, is what criteria is used to evaluate when mitigation has to occur? It seems like we don't, that's something I can't get a grasp on.
Is it, Don, it's a level of service D.
We follow our TIA policy.
Yeah, we have a policy, it's adopted by the council. I could probably go get the book and thumb through it for a while and find it. But it is spelled out in the policy adopted by the council.
Right, but in there, does it say if there's an F direction, that mitigation has to occur with the next housing development that will impact that? I mean, I'm just trying to put this into.
Mitigations in previous, I'm not talking about this project. So if you look at overall general projects, you look at whether or not the projects that are being affected are in the CIP of the impact fee, in which case their impact fees are paying their proportionate share toward those impacts. If they are creating excessive issues at intersections that aren't part of the CIP, then they look at their proportionate number of trips in comparison to the whole trips to figure out what their mitigated share would be of the costs of that project. So as an example, when the Atlas Park subdivision came forward and they're on the corner of Atlas and Hayden, their mitigated dollars equated to just about what they're giving for right-of-way for a future signal roundabout at Atlas and Hayden. Or Mark's Ranch subdivision and the subdivision, Hayden Canyon had mitigation measures they had in their project. Hayden North had mitigation measures they had to participate in. New Frontiers East First Edition, they had cost dollars that they actually pay over and above per square foot of every project that's in their mitigation. So there are additional impact fee dollars if there are impacts that are over and above what are already being collected as impact fees within the impact fee calculation. And those reports come forward from our, and you've seen those reports in previous subdivisions that have come forward that have had mitigations required. Same similar behavior that would occur with this project, as you've seen before in previous subdivisions.
Councilmember DePriest. Thank you. Again, I keep talking about trying to envision this stuff. The development on the north side, can we use names? Carrington, right? If I'm remembering correctly, the stretch of Carrington, Hayden Avenue is 2 lanes, or it kind of does, I don't know what there's a term for it, where it comes from single lane to double lane to, where they bit by bit it. And the applicant is, if I understand, is going to be required to improve up to middle of the street, which my guess is going to be creating 2 lanes.
His half width as a subdivision improvement, their subdivision is required to construct the half width of Hayden Avenue from their eastern boundary of the property, literally to almost to Hutter,
Right.
Maybe all the way to Hutter.
Because the apartments have done a little bit of that already.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they would pretty much match that
connect to that,
together.
and
All
that's
the way
kind
to-
of how things work here.
Right, and they actually are going all the way to Hutter because their property and the western property were part of a boundary line adjustment, and therefore the required frontage improvements are required fully. But that's a subdivision requirement. Should this project move forward ahead of the subdivision, then it would be their requirement. Again, timing.
Do we know whether that would basically increase that 1/2 to 2 lanes?
I would defer to Rob.
That is, in this situation, on this property, that is a 5-lane road. So they have,
And a turn lane in the middle?
so they have to increase the roadway width to accommodate 2.5 lanes
Right, okay. Just, no matter what
for
the
this
impact is,
specific project.
no matter what the impact analysis is, that's expected, no matter what.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah.
Donna, could you please put back up the Mr. Kurtz's response to item 2C? I'm going to make a bit of a right turn here on getting away from the traffic for a moment. Mr. Kurtz, I would appreciate you. I know you were here when we had the hearing, and I was talking about the monopoly hotels and how I envision a different, when I drive down Hayden Avenue, I'm looking for variety in the buildings as we go down there. I know you heard that. I'm wondering on your response, to be honest with you, I don't completely understand it. Do you feel that, let me rephrase that. Within each block of townhomes, do you envision different building heights within each block of townhomes?
Not, and that's what I was trying to, I think there's two sort of clarifications. The second one is the one you're addressing, which is I don't envision having different roof lines within the same building structure.
Okay.
For a couple of reasons. One, it gets very prohibitive from a cost perspective rather than just having a single A-frame roof on a building. But two, also, I think from an aesthetic perspective, what I'd like to propose is we're all trying to not look like big chunky monopoly hotel blocks, the 24 plexes next door. We already kind of achieved that by having smaller buildings. We're only 30 units. There are 5 to 6 per unit. So just by definition, they're sort of, thinner and narrower. You're going to have sight lines through them. And aesthetically, I think it's going to be more pleasing or more in line with what the city and staff and residents envision in that area. What I was proposing was sort of two things. One, I think we can achieve that by having the 50% rule, i.e. 50% of the buildings have, a maximum of 50% can be 3 stories. In relation to those buildings that are on the northern portion of that top 4 acres, like not right up against Hayden Avenue, but in direct visual contact with Hayden.
Sir, how many buildings do you anticipate that might be along that north frontage there?
It depends. I mean, we don't have a final plan, but it could be, a small commercial we may push to the side and then have, 3 or 4, maybe sort of 3 on that front part.
So we're getting away from the centralized, the depiction that we saw had a centralized commercial building.
We still could do that. Well, what we were trying to play with, was sort of now that we have different elevations, maybe there's something different we want to do with that. And our thought was we wouldn't want to have 2 buildings on the front towards Hayden that have the same elevation next to each other. So you have a 2-story, a 3-story, a 1-story commercial, then a 3 and a 2 or something.
To mix it up.
Mix it up, yeah. So we're going to have, but not in relation to the buildings that would be farther south on Dunkirk, because they're farther away. They're not aesthetically right in front of you, and I think we kind of achieved it.
Landscaping, there's something in it. Are we talking about landscaping right at almost the road's edge, basically within the, are we, down here on Government Way, there's some older apartments that are blocked off by, are we talking that type of, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can do some better landscaping than, again, you've seen in sort of the immediate area. I know there was some conversation about putting some more mature trees. I had a conversation with Scott MacArthur about that. I think in Hayden, we have to pick the right stuff. I think it's challenging because you've got the wind factor and kind of keeping a mature tree up as you initially plant it. But we're sort of discussing that. We know it's important, and we want to break it up not only with elevations, single story, 2-story, 3-story. We'll have different facades on the buildings, so there's a little bit of a breakup just sort of visually, which again, I think is a bit different from stuff we've seen in the area. And then addressing some landscaping in a meaningful way that kind of gives some blockage and pushes it a little back from Hayden Avenue.
Okay.
All right. Fonda,
Yes.
at this point, I could use some direction on where we need to go next. I understand certainly the concern that council members have about traffic. On the other issues, apparently, I understand how Mr. Kurtz has responded to these, and evidently he is comfortable with our layout of things that need to be done. At this point, should we be looking for a motion to approve, disapprove, or approve with conditions the zone development agreement?
It's a motion to approve as presented. A motion to approve as amended if you have some suggested amendments, or a motion to table.
Okay.
Mayor.
Councilmember DePriest.
Thank you. Okay, let me make kind of a statement and a question here. We've already approved it, not the agreement, but okay. 4 dwelling units per acre, like I said, I'm happy with. I guess I share Council President Roeder's concern about the traffic and how we are, I understand, how do we know that it's what we believe should be done or correct? Okay. But, well, I guess, is there any verbiage or any way that we could do that? I don't see that. I don't.
Well, I want to answer, first of all, Council President Roeder asked the question, who decides on the traffic? So the reason that you hire your own traffic expert is because none of us are traffic experts. And so we as a city, apparently my mic is not on. So to answer the question, our own expert would make the final decision, even if the applicant chooses to hire their own expert to do the traffic analysis. That information goes to our expert, and our expert essentially has the final say. The reason we hire experts is because we are not traffic experts, and there are rules, there are federal regulations, there are state guidelines. We have our own traffic chapter of our comprehensive plan. We have our own code sections that have to all be followed, and they have data-driven decision-making processes that are outlined for them that none of us know anything about. So to answer your question, our expert decides, the person that council has agreed to hire to be your expert to feed you that information, because none of you are. So that's the answer to that question. So you want to be really careful questioning your own expert. If you feel the need to question the answer that's provided to you by your own expert, then our second conversation should be, maybe you need to hire a different expert if you don't trust them or you don't like the answers they're giving you, or that the answers they're giving back to you through staff. This process is designed for this reason, to give these checks and balances on traffic flow. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I answered his.
Yeah, well, let me follow up, because
But the wheels are spinning.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand we're not the traffic expert, but I think that we understand A, B, C, D, and E, and F, or however that's graded. Is it possible that we as a council could put an ordinance together that says that if
Not related to this after this.
But we set the standard as to if there is 3 Fs in 3 directions, that there's got to be mitigation done to correct that.
I think.
Could we go in that direction possibly in the future?
I think it would be best, first of all, to get a complete understanding of what the current grading is of all of your intersections that you're concerned with. So that's going to be step one. And understand what that grading means. Because as I've learned through this work, and I am not a traffic expert by any means, a D to me is a very bad grade. If you can imagine, I did not like to get a D. But a level of service D in the context of traffic in a lot of situations is perfectly acceptable. So you want to really understand which intersections are graded in which way currently and what exactly that means. And then talk about possibly in a workshop setting what you would want your level of service to be. But it's really understanding what is the definition of each level of service. And I don't know that any of all of us have a complete understanding of that. And in the future, on future applications, if you want more information in a staff report regarding the intersections that are going to be affected by a particular application, and you want more information for your decision-making process, then that's something we can talk about for future applications.
That's what I was hoping would be here, but it's too late is what I'm hearing. So I can.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think we are starting to take a right turn here in the discussion, and I'd like to guide this back into the discussion at hand here. I certainly understand your concerns about traffic. I agree. However, at this point, we need to concentrate our efforts on the application in front of us.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
while you guys have been discussing traffic impact analysis, Mr. Kurtz and I have been tweaking 2C in red lines up here, trying to address his concerns. We believe that this may work should you wish to amend the conditions in the zoning development agreement, assuming that this meets your direction.
So I keep seeing 50%. So that tells me that you're gonna have 50% 3-story and 50% 2-story.
It just says no more than, so the maximum could be 50%
Okay.
each in each.
So you could have 40% 3-story and 60% 2-story, but no more than 50% 3-story.
That's correct.
Okay. I'm fine with that. I don't,
Do I hear a motion?
we have to do something, right? One way or another. All right. I'm going to motion, well, first let me preface some things here. The council has already approved the zone map amendment and the subdivision, correct? But we're just talking about the zone map amendment here.
This is just the zone.
We've already approved it, correct?
Correct.
This is just dealing with the agreement of what we're going to do here.
Correct.
I believe council's definition, description of we hire people because we trust that they are experts and they will do their job. I struggle, as council also mentioned, if like I know being a former school teacher, D's were passes. And I really struggle with kids who, hey man, I got a D, I passed, whatever. Okay. And if we look at our infrastructure and roads, yeah, they're all D's, but they're good, let's go forward. I struggle with that. And I agree. I think I put forward a bit ago that down the road, we want to look at our traffic analysis situation and how we go about it. So hopefully we can do that and maybe address what do we want. We want at least C's, come up with the mixture, whatever. But as we're talking about this, sir, I think you guys have gone well beyond the expectations of working with the city. You know, I know we're in difficult times here as far as everything, growth, density, traffic, the effects of it and everything else. These are not easy for anybody. And from what it appears here is you and your organization, company, have really tried hard to meet what the city and the people, I think, want. Are there going to be, there are some people that don't want anything there. Okay, I'd like open space. I'd like a lot of open space too. Okay, but codes are what they are, zoning's what it is. So I'm going to motion to approve this zone development agreement and trust the traffic impact analysis people, and trust our planning department that when the application comes in and that they will ensure that the agreement is met and
As amended.
as amended. Okay. These are not going to be monopoly-looking buildings with, just pounded, again, 4 units per acre is pretty darn good nowadays, considering what we're looking at otherwise. So I'm going to motion to approve it.
Could you restate your motion, please?
I'm going to motion to approve, where is it here? Is it PZE 22-0046 Madison Capital Zone Development Agreement as amended?
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Do we have any further discussion?
I'd just like to comment that I like the idea that there's a compromise on 2 and 3 stories. I have a concern about 3 stories. I've already voiced that. The world's not perfect, but if I can get something that seems to work for everybody, I think that's part of what we try to do here at the city and be concerned about what our citizens want. The annex agreements coming in allowed for 4 dwellings, residential units per acre. That's being met by that. That's a quarter acre. That's not high density. So from that point of view, I like that we're meeting that. It seems like the applicant is workable. He's trying to adapt. So for that reason, I agree with. So I second this and just.
Do we have any other comments, questions?
Yeah, I have some comments.
Councilmember
Yeah.
White.
Hi, I was opposed to the zone change at this time, just because of the impact it would have on the city of Hayden. But that has been passed. So I'm looking at this now in different eyes with the plans you have ahead of you here. I know you guys do good work, and I just, so I'll be voting yes on this. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Council President Roder?
Yes.
Councilmember Dupree?
Yes.
Motion passes. And Mr. Kurtz, I'd like to add my appreciation for the way you've worked with the city on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Next item, 3C, Madison Capital, you're not off the hook yet. Item 3C, PCE 22-0046, the Madison Capital Zone Map Amendment Ordinance. Ladies and gentlemen in the audience, this is essentially a follow-up procedure to our previous hearing. Donna, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's the final step in making the zone map amendment from commercial that it was previously to the request for mixed use. And so that's what the ordinance provides. I note that it is in the MU2 zone designation of mixed use zone, and it will develop accordingly because of the zoning development agreement. But in clarification with Fonda, as well as the timing of the application, it is moving forward as a mixed use zone designation, just for clarification.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from council?
Question, please.
Mr. DePriest.
Yeah. Reading through this, and again, I do not see any reference to the zone development agreement in the ordinance.
Correct.
Is that normal procedure? Is that something that's, I mean, I would think that the ordinance should reference the zone development agreement.
The ordinance just does not reference the zoning development agreement, but the zoning development agreement will be recorded, and so it'll be a public record.
Okay, okay, yeah.
The reality is that there could be, as we go through this process, a need to amend the zoning development agreement, which if there's a request for an amendment of any kind, it would come back to you, but you don't want that to affect your ordinance down the road if you need an amendment to your zoning development agreement.
Okay, so the skeptic, I guess, unfortunately, in me says that if, and again, I really appreciate the applicant and I trusted what's going to, but just in general, if something were to happen down the road there and there were you said this, no, we didn't, you said that, and it's already in an ordinance and they're saying, what are you talking about? Zone development agreement.
It's recorded.
It's recorded, it runs with the land.
It runs with
Okay,
the land and
okay.
it's public record.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I got it, okay.
Do we have any other questions or comments from council? Councilmember
I'm just
White.
wondering why these decisions weren't reversed, why the other one. Was it
Can't get to the ordinance unless they've agreed to the conditions that you've imposed to allow them to have the ordinance. That's why you have to do the agreement
Okay.
before the ordinance. Good question.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make that motion, Mayor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before you do that, thank you. I know this is cumbersome, but it's state law.
Oh, okay. Reading.
I'd like a motion to read the ordinance by title only, to suspend the rule of reading in full on 3 separate dates, and to approve the first reading. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White,
So this is for the zone map amendment,
this motion is to suspend the rule of reading.
reading, okay, yes.
Councilmember DePreez?
Yes.
And Council President Roder.
Yes.
Here is the first and only reading. An ordinance of the City of Hayden, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for change in zoning classification for the land described in Section 1 of this ordinance from commercial to mixed use, providing for amendment of the official zoning map to reflect these changes, providing that all prior zones applicable to the lands described in Section 1 are hereby superseded, providing severability, and providing an effective date. I'd like to hear a motion that the ordinance be adopted on having passed its first reading by title only, and that it be published by summary incorporating the title as the core of the summary upon passage. Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember White,
No,
Council President Roder,
Yes.
and Councilmember DePreez.
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 3B. PZE 22-0076, the Madison Ranch Subdivision Master Development Agreement. Donna, have you got some information for us on that?
So again, this is just a matter of kind of transparency through the subdivision process. It's a public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's a public meeting generally with the City Council. This one had a public hearing because it was a little wonky in the middle. But you approved the written decision under the consent calendar. And so the next piece of that is a master development agreement, which the applicant signs the agreement, which memorializes the conditions of approval that were approved by the council. Staff recommended conditions of approval in this case, and includes the construction improvement in template, the construction improvement agreement in template format. So it's got the legal, the preliminary plat map. Exhibit C is the written decision with all of the conditions, and then Exhibit D is the construction improvement agreement. Generally, you see these under the consent calendar, but because Madison Ranch and Madison Capital have, so many moving parts, I thought it would be important to put it under unfinished business in this case. And so it's just approving the recognition that this is their agreement, and to move forward, they'll sign it, and then we'll record it. It will run with the land as well. based on this whole document is based on template language that's been approved by our attorney that we use for all subdivisions, but didn't want it to get mucked around in the consent calendar where it was lost.
Do we have any questions or comments from council? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the Madison Ranch Subdivision Master Development Agreement?
I will. I motion to approve PZE 220076 Madison Ranch Subdivision Master Development Agreement as presented.
Second?
I'll second it.
Any further comments or questions? Roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember White,
No.
Council President Roder,
Yes.
and Councilmember DePreez.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next action item is item 3E, the City Code Text Amendment Standards of Approval. This item is brought forward as Member White requested that we consider changing our standards of approval. And Don, could you put up do you have a way of putting up on here the current standards of approval? Oh, and I'm sorry, Councilmember DePreez brought it up. We also have, in addition to discussing the 2016 standards, our council, and I believe that Councilmember DePreez perhaps first brought this up, about adding the neighborhood context into our decision standards. And I'd first like to start off with Councilmember White. You have, Councilmember White, would you like to lead that discussion?
Well, I'd like to hear what Councilmember DePreez has to say first. He wanted to add that one. Or should I go ahead to go?
If council decides to adopt the 2016 standards you wish, then we have no reason to discuss the neighborhood context.
Okay, this is just a copy of the old standards and the new standards together for the
Council
council
members?
to just refer to, yes. This was taken directly from Donna's memo that she gave us.
Thank you, Abby.
Yeah, so this was cut and paste from Donna's memo that she handed out in September, I believe, or it was written in September. And, yeah, I just was, as we're talking about the standards of approval, I just thought it would, that perhaps since we're questioning the direction that it's going, and that it doesn't give the council a lot of discretion, that if we just go back to the old standards, we could, that would include the one standard that Councilmember DePreez wants to re-add into it. But could we just read through the old standards from 2016? And just,
If you wish, go
okay.
ahead.
Okay, it's not that long. Number 1, is the rezoning or amendment consistent with adopted plans? Number 2, does the rezoning or amendment further public health, safety, and welfare? 3, is the infrastructure present or can it be available within 2 years to support the development that the rezone or amendment will allow for? Number 4, are there circumstances that justify the rezoning or amendment? Number 5, is the rezoning or amendment consistent with the neighborhood context? Number 6, does the rezoning or amendment align with the zone district's purpose and intent? And 7, would it result in consistent regulations for each property with the same zoning designation count citywide? Yeah, and I was just proposing that rather than piecemealing, fixing the newer one, just stepping back and returning to the older one. The standards are shorter and clearer, gives us discretion, and we don't need to give conditions or impose conditions upon acceptance.
Discussion from other council members.
I guess I would ask what the process is for putting them all in. Would it require hearings and the like to totally replace all of them as compared
Any
to?
code text amendment requires public hearings.
So the singular edition of just adding the context will also require,
It would.
no matter what, okay.
I wasn't prepared to kind of analyze going back to the old, and I did see the addition of E, like that idea. I concur with Ed, I like that. But I would want to spend some more time, first blush here, I can't tell you, going back to the old right off that I agree with that. I would need more time to study that issue.
Councilmember DePriest?
Yeah, I've spent quite a bit of time looking at this. And yeah, it's different wording in a different form, but the 2019 incorporates what I see as basically all of the 2016 except for what my concern was, the context. And I think when you add in the ability, amendments to the zone map and zone text shall be consistent with the neighborhood context, that gives the planning commission, council, the ability to take into consideration input, and especially input from those people immediately affected with it. Otherwise, like I said, I see in different form, I see public health, safety, and welfare. I see public health, safety, and welfare. Is it consistent with the plans? I see it's consistent with the comp plan and the zone map. I believe we already added in that we have a code or text related to 2 years completion with subdivisions or
Subdivision.
and the like. Are there circumstances that justify the rezoning? Well, does it meet all the criteria? If I'm, real quickly kind of going through this stuff. Just myself, I think it gives council, the commission, the ability to put weight to the people immediately affected by it more so than the 2019 does, and that was my goal.
Other comments or? Would one of you care to make a motion?
I'd like to make the motion that make the suggested code change concerning standards of approval in formatting of notes section by adding paragraph E, amendments to the zone map and zone text shall be consistent with the neighborhood context. So my motion is to go forward and go through the process of making an amendment to it.
And to clarify, Mr. Roeder, that would be amending the 2019 standards and not going back to the 2016?
Correct. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not in a position to, right now, to compare both and change, have a wholesale change. I would need more time. Maybe we consider that in the future, but for right now, this is all I was looking at, because I didn't have this to compare to. Was it sent out in an email or?
No, it wasn't, but it was included in the memo earlier that we got from Donna. So,
We have a motion on the table.
Motion,
Do we have
okay.
a second?
Second.
Comments and discussion?
I have a question. If we find that this isn't adequate, can we come back at another time and amend it further? I mean,
You may. I would also like to add to your consideration as we move forward with this, that one of the reasons that the 2016 standards of approval were reworked is because having them in the form of a question invites arbitrary and capricious decision-making, which we don't want our council to do. So they're reworked into a format that gives you directive on how to evaluate rather than just asking a question that leaves open your decision-making. So even if you consider going back to some form of 2016 standards of approval, I would encourage you to have those in statement form, not question form.
Do we have any other comments or questions? Hearing none, if I might paraphrase your motion, or would you please restate your motion?
Yes, I'd like to motion that the suggested code changes concerning standards of approval and formatting of notes section, that we add paragraph E, which is amendments to the zone map and zone text shall be consistent with the neighborhood context,
Using the 2019 standards.
using the 2019 standards, yes.
Roll call vote, please, Ed.
Mayor, may I clarify for the record that the
Yes.
2019 standards are the current standards for approval in our code?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Roll call. Councilmember White,
No.
Councilmember DePriest.
Yes.
And Council President Roder.
Yes,
As a corollary to that, we, Councilmember DePriest actually suggested that we codify the section of the code that in the note says that there shall be no more than 8 units per acre in mixed residential units. Councilmember White, or pardon me, Councilmember DePriest, would you like to elaborate on that or lead the discussion?
Sure. In our recent issues related residential multifamily and residential mixed use, with the interim ordinance, there was great discussion, debate about exactly what mixed residential allowed. There was conflict and assertion that residential multifamily was lower dense, allowed for lower density, and yet it had, I believe it was conditional use permit, which allowed, I don't know, 14 plus units and the like. And there's a lot of back and forth and stuff flowing out, information flowing out, and a lot of confusion. And I would hope that by codifying the fact, stating it, that mixed residential allows a maximum of 8 dwelling units per acre, that would eliminate any future confusion as to exactly what the density is that is allowed.
Onda, in relationship to this, we at first considered simply reformatting the Hayden City Code, and you have, after you looked at that, you suggested that we actually go through the hearing process to change this and also to change the neighborhood context this council just passed.
So yes, we reached out, well, Donna reached out to Sterling Codifiers. Sterling Codifiers drafts and maintains our city code. And they had indicated that they could simply do a reformat that doesn't change one word in the code and just remove the notes. It is already codified. So let's be really clear for the public that it's already codified. Just because it says notes does not mean it's not valid and it doesn't exist. So Sterling Codifiers had indicated they could just change the formatting. But since we were going to go through the public hearing process anyways with regards to the standards of approval, or it looked like we were going to, I suggested we just take that reformatting through the public hearing process at the same time.
Okay.
Mayor, I have a question. I didn't notice it was on the agenda as an action item, so.
It was included in your last motion. When you just made the motion with regards to taking the standards of approval through the process, and you said to include the reformatting of the note, it was perfect.
Oh, that included.
It's included.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's right there.
Okay, got it.
So that was just clarification of what just occurred.
Yes.
What's going through?
Moving right along then.
Moving
Okay.
right along.
All right. Good. Item number 4A, new business.
Oh, wait.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, Mr. Soderling, our Public Works Director. We would appreciate an update on the Ramsey Road Improvement Project.
Mayor and Council, thank you. I'm going to take you through brief history and get you updated on the projects on Ramsey Road. I'm going to basically stick, for the most part, to the transportation road project, but there's a lot there, and I want to make sure that you understand that there's more than one project there. So when we talk about Ramsey Road projects, you got to understand there's potential for 8 different projects that we're currently under contract on. So that I know that there's been some confusion in the past on that, so that's why I put this slide in there that from the road project, there was originally one project. It got split, and so it's the Ramsey Road Extension Wyoming Lancaster Phase A, which is truly Wyoming to Buckles. And then there's the Ramsey Road Extension Wyoming to Lancaster 1B, which is Buckles to Lancaster. Those projects are split up. However, as of probably 6 months ago, they have been jointly funded, and so they will be jointly constructed, though there will remain 2 projects just for the purpose of saving money and trying to redo the plans and bring them all back together. However, there's also ongoing projects that we have, and they're sewer projects. And so there's the Ramsey Gravity Sewer Phase 1, which is Wyoming to the existing 24-inch sewer line at the end of Reed Road. And that project lies probably 85% underneath the roadway 1A project and 15% beyond that. And so it needs to be constructed at the same time or before. There's also the Ramsey Road Gravity Sewer Phase 2, which is Dakota to Wyoming, which is completely separate. It's completely south of this roadway extension project. And then there's the Ramsey Gravity Sewer Phase 3, which lies underneath the Ramsey Road Extension 1B, and it will have to be constructed since the funding happened. So those are where some of this confusion gets to. Then we have the H6 sewer lift station, which is part of this Ramsey Road, and the H6 force main and the Moon Ridge force main. So if I got you confused, ask the question now and I'll try to clarify it.
Alan, I might just throw in those numbers, people might wonder what those numbers, those correspond to our sewer master plan. So you can go into the master plan and look at that number, and it'll show the project and the cost estimate for those projects.
Yeah.
And then the third one as well was one that Alan took to the Urban Renewal District, the previous meeting, and asked for them to pay for the design.
This Phase 3, yes.
Gotcha.
So I think we were talking a little bit about projects and priorities and when they're going to happen. And if you look at these numbers, they do have meaning. If there's a 1 there, those were our highest priority projects in the sewer master plan. If you look at this next group of numbers, it's a 6. That means it's in the H6 sewer basin. And then the next project, the next number just relates to a project number in that priority. So if the number 1 priorities, this is project 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This project was in phase, it was a less priority. That's why the 2. We anticipated that this project, and I'll get to this a little later, it's going to happen in 2027. That means that this project didn't have to happen until 2027. So it was not a high priority until these projects got funded together as of 6 months ago. So priorities change as things happen. Yes.
this funding, is there a deadline on it? I mean, does it
Yes.
it speeds up the time that we need to complete the project? Mm-hmm. Okay.
We have to be ready to bid by the 2024 year. And so that's,
Your way.
yes.
Yeah.
So, just an introduction to the Ramsey Road project. We're going to, from here on out, we're really going to talk about the Ramsey Road extension project, those two phases. They're going to get constructed together. The project was identified as a capital improvement project as early as 2007 in the City of Hayden strategic plan. It was, at that time, was identified as a short-term need within five years and estimated to be $7.6 million. So clear back in 2007, this was identified as a high needs project. The project also was identified in the 2013 strategic plan. And at that time, it was analyzed in the analysis of the plan was included in all the work as it was already completed. So when we were looking at intersections or anything, it was like, oh, this project's done. And the reason was because the design contract was noticed in 2012. So it was already under contract to be, before we even had the 2013 deal. So this was a presentation that went to the public, talks about the history of the transportation planning, and if you can read that, this is a sheet out of the 2007 plan that identifies both the Hutter bypass and also right here, this Ramsey Road extension. This is a sheet in the 2013 transportation plan that also identified the Hutter bypass and this 2000. So this project's been in the works for, I know the Hutter plan's been in the works since 97. I'm not sure exactly when Ramsey Road came into the deal. These projects, when they're developed, there's federal projects, so this is north, this is south. This road here is Lancaster. This is Highway 95. This is the airport runway. So when these projects go forward, there's a lot of work done, and there was 15 potential alignments that were analyzed for this project. In other words, they were actually said, here are 15, excuse me. Here's one that runs right through the airport. Here it was going to be a tunnel. There's some that come through kind of the end of the airport. These did get eliminated by some rule changes in FAA rules. The project follows this one. Here's 8, and it's this alignment. Kind of comes along here, across there around the end of the airport, down Buckles, and around Lancaster. So then these were looked at, and then it was kind of trimmed down. We can't go through the airport. We can't go through this zone. We got to go clear here in the end. And these were looked at, and these projects or alignments 1, 4, 5, 8, 11, and 15. And again, you can see alignment 8 here, which is the alignment that the current road follows. Somewhere along the line, it was changed, and it didn't follow any of these, which were part of the report and had to be, and that became a problem. So, and I wasn't here. I can't tell you how it got there. I can't tell you why it got there. But between 2013, when that study was done, and 16, some things happened. And the key things here is some of the FAA policies changed, which resulted in a conflict to the alignment. So in other words, some of those alignments were no longer allowed. The FAA policy changed. The alignment was moved off of all the 15 concepts, and I can go back here in a second and show you where it went, but it wasn't on any of those that were studied. And then the airport was undertaking a master plan which affected the road projects, and FAA required to be on equal status with FWHA as part of the environmental report, which became very problematic. they have two different requirements. You can't meet both masters. And so, as a result of that, in about 2016, maybe 4 months after I got here, the city was notified that there was concern with the alignment not meeting the intent. FAA was concerned that it was in conflict with the runway and not meeting their environmental standards, and the funding was in jeopardy. And they basically said there's a good chance this is not going to happen. Project was put on hold while the airport completed the master plan. Project alignment was restored back to the alignment representing the original concept in the funding application, which really was route number 8, which is where we're at. And 2018, the airport alignment in relationship to the Hutter bypass and Ramsey Road extension was agreed upon. In other words, KMPO agreed that here's how Hutter's going to be aligned. City of Hayden agreed this is how Ramsey's going to be aligned, and the airport agreed that this is where the runway zones are going to be, and we're all in agreement. We're back on track to go through this process. The environmental report was resolved. I mean, both FAA and FHWA, those two agencies had to figure out how to play together. That was interesting. The project got split into 2 projects, and I told you that, and the reason it got split was because there wasn't enough funding to do both projects. Yes, Ed?
I get FAA, can you tell me, what is FHW?
Oh, FAA is Federal
Highway
Aviation.
Highway?
FHW is Federal Highways Association. So FAA manages all the federal ends of aviation. FHWA manages all federal parts of roadway projects. Thank you. I did not clarify that in there. Project got split into 2 projects, with 1A being construction 2024 and 1 being undetermined when it was going to be funded, but it was considered to be probably 2027. So at that point, we went back to the drawing board, split the project in half, started redesigning it to be 2 projects. The preliminary plans were completed in that manner. The right-of-way plans were completed. Phase 1A design was completed, and we started the right-of-way appraisal and negotiation projects in 2021, around February. Today we're working on 21 parcel purchases to complete this project. Roughly 11 of those are complete or to the point that they will complete and without any known issues. So a little over half. 3 are with government agencies. I can talk about that because it's government agency. That is with the county and the airport. Those are currently at the county commissioners, as I understand it, being reviewed. The rest of these are private property. I can't go into the details on this, but there's 3 are still in discussions and making progress that we hope that we'll have good success on. 2 are starting over. Complications, issues that arose, property changed, zoning got changed, property got split, something happened to change ownership, something that the city doesn't have control over. So now it's no longer the same parcel, it's no longer has the same value, it no longer even represents the same potential build out. And two of them have stalled but they're still under negotiations. We're hoping that we can get through that process. But those are the 2 probably the most concerned. So what's next? We need to complete the right-of-way purchases. Okay, that's highest priority. We need to enter into contract to complete design of phase 1B. That will be coming forward to the council. Again, that was thought was going to be done in 2027. It's not. It's going to be done in 2024, just coming up quickly. We need to complete the design of phase 3 sewer. That's that small section on the very top end by Lancaster. It's quite small and it's quite uncomplicated, so that's a good thing. We need to we'll have to complete construction of phases 1 3 of the sewer ahead of the road project or incorporate it into the road project, which is problematic. I mean, it can be done. It's just not, you end up paying a little bit higher wages, Davis-Bacon wages, and things like that. And then we need to complete the construction of phase 1A and 1B in 2024. So the reason that I wanted to go through this, and I went through it fast because there's a lot there, but the reason I really wanted to bring it from where it was to now is that we are really about a year away from completing this project that started clear back in 2007. So this project has been ongoing. There's been a lot of work. There's been numerous environmental studies done. There's been numerous sound studies done. There's been numerous routes explored and vetted and changed. And we are really on the last leg of this project, folks. We are that close. So I think it's kind of gives you an idea how a project this large and this complicated, how long it can take to get from point A to point B. For that, I stand with questions. Yes, Matt.
With the, have you anticipated, or how will this affect the Ramsey-Hayden intersection? And are there any funds that will be used to help mitigate the traffic there, or is that sole and separate?
That's sole and separate.
Okay.
Councilmember DePriest.
Construction must be,
If I could just expand on that just a little bit. This project and most of our transportation plans is already in there as part of that. In other words, we know what's going to happen, so we model it as already happened, and we already anticipate that those impacts are already in that intersection when we're looking at those projects. Even though it's not there, but the traffic that it's going to generate is already showing up in our modeling. Does that?
Yeah, my only concern is, well, we build this extension and we don't do anything to that intersection, what's going to happen?
Right, and it's already in the model as it's already been built.
I know, but if it's in the model versus it being built is my concern.
It's in the model, so the impacts of this are already showing up in our transportation plan. They already show up as an impact. Does it, maybe I'm not answering.
I just wonder if we're going to get it fixed first, that intersection, or if that's going to come sometime later.
We are working on that intersection. We haven't funded it yet, but it's in our capital improvement plan.
Okay.
so maybe if I think of what I'm hearing here, and it's kind of same. So let's say, first question here, scenario. I know you love what ifs, okay? So anyways, we complete the Hutter bypass and it facilitates significantly more traffic. Because people go, yeah, let's get off night. And if I'm interpreting what Council President Roeder's just asking, let's say we don't have Ramsey and Hayden, it still sits as it is, and then all of a sudden you have more traffic coming down through there, you're gonna, again, you're gonna squeeze down. But as you say, it's in the plan and will be dealt with. We live with it until, okay. So I guess my question is, construction has to be completed by 2027?
No, construction has to start in 2024.
Oh, okay, has to start. Is there a completion date?
Yes, only from the standpoint that we're not going to let a contract run for an extended period of time
But
because
there's no
that's,
funding requirement date. So as long as we get started on time.
once we get
we're
started,
good.
we've met that criteria.
And I don't know if you can at all comment. I understand the, issues. The complications that exist in some of the acquisitions. No.
We would have to go into it, other than the government properties,
Let me
we'd
ask
have
the
to go
question
into
that you can-
executive
that you
session
can
to
say it.
discuss those.
If they hold up initiation of construction, can we even comment on that? What happens if they do? What happens if you haven't been able to acquire come the time we're required to initiate?
Property acquisitions will be completely resolved before construction begins.
Okay. Right. That's my only question.
Councilmember White?
Yeah, so just to clarify, tonight is not an action item, this is merely
Correct.
informational?
It's a discussion.
Okay, and I was just wondering if these slides would be made available to us in a
These
copy?
slides are, I'm more than happy to send these to you.
Okay.
They're in the they're in the council meeting file right now. So Abby has access to them, I have access to them.
Okay,
All city staff has access, we can provide those, you bet.
okay.
Final question, Ms. Soderling. If we don't make the deadlines, are there any financial implications to the city?
There are potentially huge financial implications, yes. We've made a commitment, we have an agreement. When we started borrowing this, not borrowing, we're taking this money and spending it. So we've been spending federal dollars since 2012, 2013 on this project. And there are
Well, then we have to pay that
expectations.
money back?
That is, I don't know. That's kind of what the agreement says. How's that?
I was wondering. Councilmember White?
Yes. Can we go back to the slide talking about the properties that still need to be obtained or are being obtained?
You bet.
Thank you. No, there was another one with numbers, like how many were
Yeah.
purchased already. I think it was,
The ones that were in conflict.
Here we are.
oh, there we go. Thank you. So my concern is with the homeowners who are unwilling. This is something that impacts their homes, their lifestyles. What's the city's responsibility to that? How
To mitigate those.
to mitigate those? Yeah. So I'm just concerned with the implications of eminent domain having to be exercised on homeowners who
Case that-
are unwilling that.
In that case, the courts will decide what that mitigation is and the city will pay those mitigation measures.
Okay. All right. And I really appreciate you're going to all this work to put this together for us. I've had a lot of questions and we've sat down and talked about this. I'm also interested in seeing like completely what's going on with Ramsey, because there's a lot of, Council President Roeder mentioned the Hayden Avenue traffic circle. There's also a traffic circle going on Honeysuckle and Ramsey. And then there's the widening of Ramsey, going all the way to Prairie in the future. And I would just like to see the full picture of Ramsey Road.
Just Ramsey Road?
Yes.
Okay.
Jimmy's one complete.
That may be outside the scope of what we're here to
Right.
talk
Yeah,
about.
I don't have that here, but.
Right, I understand
We
that.
could schedule that for a future meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean,
Excellent.
In the future is fine. I was just wondering.
I wanted to kind of keep this a little bit compartmentalized so that we didn't get so far that I think we get this and we do it in pieces. If that's the case in front of council or in a workshop or whatever, it won't be as confusing and you'll have a better understanding of it if we keep it kind of into smaller pieces. So, and that was it.
I'd
That was
also-
the hope.
I'd also like to mention that our overall plan for Ramsey Road is included in the transportation plan.
It is. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you spending the time tonight.
Can we have a-
We'll have a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 7:03. We will reconvene at 7:08.
There's a lot of people who have a problem with that.
Still on the air.
You will, let me have to read. Don't copy me, so don't forget that.
I understand. That's where we're at. Right?
No, they're yummy.
General, ladies and gentlemen, we're reconvening our meeting tonight. Our next item is item 4A. It is the acceptance of the official ballot results for the November 8th, 2022 election. I'd like to ask our city clerk, Abby Sanchez, to give us the background on that and read them.
Yes, Mayor and Council, good evening. On the November 8th ballot, the city had a ballot measure asking voters if they would be in favor of increasing the city's base budget levy, the city's base budget for additional law enforcement services. And the election results for that, there was, for in favor of that ballot measure, the total was 3,665 votes, and those against that ballot measure was 2,096.
At this point, I'd like a motion from council to accept the official ballot results for November 8th, 2022 election.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember White?
Yes?
Council President Roder?
Yes.
And Councilmember DePreez?
Yes.
Our next item, 4B, resolution adopting the 2023 calendar year meeting calendar. I'd like to ask our city clerk to also explain that.
So every year we publish our meeting calendar for the whole year for all the city's commissions and city council meetings in the Coeur d'Alene Press, and we also post this calendar here at City Hall. And that is attached to the resolution as Exhibit A. So it includes all of the commission meetings scheduled for this next year, as well as council meetings, and all of the commissions have had the opportunity to review their meeting dates and this calendar, and any changes requested have been made.
I would hear a motion to adopt the 2023 meeting calendar.
So moved.
Second? Second?
Second.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Mr.
One item, just looking ahead, you can do this or you don't have to, but on the 26th of December next year is another council meeting, and it was suggested that you might, at this point, just can't, not have that meeting on the schedule or cancel it, so you don't have to take action for the next year, because it's highly likely that you're going to not want to have a meeting on the 26th of December. One suggestion.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Would you, Mr. DePreez, would you care to amend your motion to adopt it with the exception of December 26th for the council meeting?
Sure, sounds good to me. Motion to amend my motion to remove December 26th as a council meeting.
Thank you. I have a second?
A second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Council President Roder?
Yes.
And Councilmember DePreez?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item 4C, PZE 22-0152, Reclid Properties LLC annexation request. And Don, I need to ask you, did I pronounce that correctly, or does it just go by a string of letters?
String of letters.
String of letters. R-E-K-L-E-D. Okay. Please, go ahead.
So tonight we're here to hear a request for consideration to annex property into the city of Hayden. And there were two PDFs in the council packet. One of them was a memo talking specifically about this request. And one of them was a flow chart that worked through the process of annexation. So before a project comes forward with a formal application for annexation, they come before council and request consideration to look at the possibility of annexing. So that gives council the opportunity to say either yes, we'd like to entertain the idea of potentially annexing you, or no, we're not interested at all in looking at annexing at this time. Tonight, that's where we're at. We're looking at, whether the council wants to move forward or not. And if the council does want to move forward, additional items that may be required per the council's direction for the applicant to provide as part of their application in order to start the process. Just if council chooses to entertain the idea of an annexation and they apply and they go through the process, that it's a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, where the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends a zoning designation based on their request. And it's a recommendation to council should council decide to annex. So the council could work through this whole process, bring this process forward to council at the second public hearing, and upon review of the record, decide to either approve the annexation contingent upon an annexation agreement, or decide to disapprove based on the information that you've received from the applicant through their process. So tonight, we're just at the, if you want to entertain the idea of them moving forward. So with that, I'm just going to kind of give some brief summary, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Circle, who's going to represent on behalf of the applicant. So this is PZE 220152, and that RREK LED Properties is an annexation request. It's for 3 parcels. It's for this piece of property, which is relatively vacant at this point of time, 61.26 acres. It's for the one adjacent to it that has a house on it. That's 20.24 acres. And then this little strip, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, but there's a little bitty strip of land, full length of this piece of property. It's approximately 35 feet plus or minus feet in width. And it is about 2.23 acres. Kind of got covered up in part of the memo that I sent you, but there are 3 parcels that are there. It's in the exclusive tier of the area of city impact. It's currently zoned agriculture. It has 1 single-family residence on it, and it's within the H6 sewer basin, not yet constructed. Okay. The existing zoning map shows that the property to the south of this property is within the Hayden North subdivision, and it's in a planned unit development with single-family residential directly south. And then the rest of the area on both the east and the west are within Kootenai County property, and the property that is in your packet, it will show this area to be mining in the county. It'll show the rest of the area here to be in light industrial, and it'll show this area to be agricultural here, and it shows this area as being light industrial, just as a matter of, kind of where it is in process. Versus our future land use map that shows the area to be cut literally pretty much in half by the proposed Hutter corridor. It recognizes the area below as being both within the outer critical zone of the airport's runway protection zones, and it is commercially zoned, and then north of what's proposed to be Hutter as mixed use and residential. And the applicant's request is for the entire area within those 3 parcels to go to single-family residential, which would be a comprehensive plan map amendment and a zone map amendment, should this move forward through the application process. And then we had some staff recommended conditions of approval, but before I get to those, I'd like the applicant to be able to present. Okay? Steve, it's all yours. Is that a good one, or do you want the other one?
That'll work.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name's Steve Circle, for the record. I'm here on behalf of Aspen Homes, and the owner, Todd Sams, here as well. In the memo, if you've read it through, Aspen has been a developer in this area for custom homes for a little over 25 years. And they purchased this property and they came to me with the request to come before with you for consideration. As Donna stated, this is part of obviously an exclusive tier. This is an opportunity for you guys to manage this growth as it sees fit. And if you feel tonight that this may be considerable, we'd like to bring an application forward. We've met with staff, the city engineer as well as with Donna. And I've looked at this. I recognize, and I show it in my memorandum that I recognize the bisecting of our property with the Hutter bypass alignment. And we feel it's a better fit to be R1 instead of as it's shown here in the future land use map. I think it's a good logical location for growth, and it's stand for any questions you may have.
Members of council, questions?
As usual. Yeah, I look at it, and again, just from my personal looking at going, well, a couple things first. We don't know if the Hutter bypass is going to, will be, when, or however, what. So that's a big part of the whole thing here. But then you just said that you're looking to have single-family homes. So you're saying that you're projecting that if the Hutter bypass eventually does come through there, that you're going to butt up against it with single-family homes?
Yes.
You sound walls, or how are you going to deal with?
That's a good question. We've looked at very conceptually how this may lay out for the roads and whatnot, and, looking at Hayden North to the south of us. One thing that Aspen has done is they don't build cookie cutter boxes. They like high-end or middle class, nice homes. And so, it's a combination of density, it's a combination of alignments, curvature roads. And what I envision here, and as we've spoken a few times and we've met, is that we could see there's going to be a lot of strippings on that. So we could build sound berms with the strippings and a berm along both the alignment on both sides, north and south of the Hutter alignment. And not only that, keeping in mind that when that is built, there's going to be an excess of topsoil even when they build that road. If they build it, hopefully it is moving forward sometime soon.
And it sounds like you're planning on waiting until, let's say, they eventually do get approved and begin or initiate. Sounds like you're waiting until they complete construction of the bypass before you even start?
No, not necessarily. As you well know, going through this process, it's not a matter of 30, 45 days. Right. We've got a lot of work to do. So when we work through this, we would certainly phase this proposed development. If it seems that, this is something you guys would like, this direction you'd like to grow into, then we would work with your staff and bring forth an application that would be phased and.
No, I think where I'm going is this could be 10 years.
Yeah.
Realistically, before we even know for sure. And so you're willing to sit and wait 10 years before you initiate the process to do this.
That is not what we would want to do.
Not you'd want to, but so are you saying that at some point in time, even before the Hutter bypass is approved or certain, that you would initiate the process? And then that's the picture I'm having, the vision again, I'm having a hard time envisioning.
Well, what we're looking at now is we recognize this alignment, and this alignment didn't just come overnight. There's been a lot of time already spent in that alignment. So we can recognize that what we could do with a portion of this property that is out of that corridor. And that's what we'd want to focus on moving forward. Let's say, for example, the alignment is changed and it doesn't bisect the property as is shown right here. Well, then we can clearly modify our plan.
Yeah,
trying to work with this.
It's the uncertainty. I believe the route has been changed, modified, whatever, already. And somebody said this started in the 90s even.
I think you're right.
And I know it's down at ITD now, I believe, and they're doing their studies or whatever and things like that, that there is a possibility that it could be changed again. It's just this uncertainty of it that always, concerns me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilperson Rhodes?
Can you describe the property to the east? The orange, mostly orange.
This piece right here,
Yeah, can you tell me what that is?
well, it's an old rock pit, and it was previously owned by Interstate. I believe it's privately owned now. It is not allowed for, it's not an active rock pit, but it's a pretty sizable hole. And we don't have any control and interest in it, but that's what it is.
So, is there any way you can zoom in on that? I'd like to see on the, where it's not colored in orange, that other photo was, the one on the left. Can you zoom in on that at all?
I don't think it can,
It's a
but I got the
slide.
color off of it though.
That helps. Well, but my concern is when you say it's a very deep pit, it's a mining area. One of the concerns I have is building residential units next to a mining area. I see that as a safety issue. That isn't something that I would particularly like to see.
Yeah. Well, it's a good question, good concern too. And, you know, in the process, we obviously want to create, and I have successfully, and so has Todd, many times in the county and many of the cities, surrounding cities, including the city of Hayden, safe neighborhoods. So, you know, we wouldn't be opposed to, you know, as we go through here, a lot of times we'll do perimeter fencing to keep the neighborhood and keep that separate, which is really a pretty good measure to put into place. Say, for example, Hawk's Nest. We did a perimeter fence on that. In fact, on the frontage along Atlas, we did a block wall fence when I designed that one.
Yeah, and have you ever built a development next to a mining area like this?
Well, it's not an active mine again, and I don't believe it's approved to be a mine or could be reclaimed to be in a mine. Right now, it's just a hole, you know, a big hole that really needs to be reclaimed.
So that's a yes or a no?
Oh, I don't recall if I've actually designed right next to a rock pit. No. So no.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember White?
Yes, hello. I'd like to know, right now, it's zoned agriculture and it's in the county. So how many homes could be built on it right now with the
None.
zoning it has?
Agriculture would have to be changed to rural. It'd have
Oh,
to be
okay,
changed to residential.
okay. And if you had it changed to rural, then what would it?
Well,
allowed?
if it was rural, then it would be 5 units to the acre. I'm sorry, correction, 5 acre lots.
Okay, all right. And then if this goes into effect, this annexation, or, and you're allowed to do single family, have you calculated how many homes you could get on there with that?
We haven't yet, but the minimum square footage on the lot, I believe, is 8,250. Yeah. Which would be similar to Hayden North to the south. And we feel that on a planning standpoint, that's a logical transition. If we were going to ask for something other than the proposed future land use map, then we would be consistent with what's adjacent to it. That's a logical direction.
I can give you the rough answer, 83.73 acres at 4 dwellings per acre is 335 dwellings.
But you're including the Hutter roadway.
Right, I just took it exactly, so it would be less, but I
Rough number.
just the rough math on the acreage that, you know,
Sure,
so, but you're right, you know, that would take a significant,
yeah.
you know.
Mr. Circle, in the event that the city were to annex this, given the uncertainty of the corridor right now, what areas would you develop first?
Our phase one would be what you would call in the color red. Well, not all of that entirely. We could probably see that in 3 to 4 phases. You know, we would want to develop as the market drives it and not just bring all these lots online. So,
Okay. All right. Councilmember White.
Yeah, and this is on the H6 sewer line?
Yep, that's correct.
Mayor, I have, if I may, and my question is say that we don't approve the annexation, it doesn't preclude you from going to the county and building nice custom homes, which Aspen does, on 5-acre lots. Is that correct?
If you approve us to move forward tonight, for giving us a consideration, and we move forward with an annexation, then yes, we can't go build in the county. Because we moved through, well, once we apply for the city, we're applying to be annexed into the city. But we're also within your ACI exclusive tier. So if you feel this is a logical location that you might want to grow to, then we'll take that as a, yes, you would consider annexing in, and then we would come back before you, starting with P and Z, as Donna stated, and present a formal application for annexation.
Yeah, that's my question. I'm saying if the council did not want to move forward with an annexation, you could still build custom homes on 5-acre lots on the property.
You are correct, yes. I'm sorry.
So this doesn't inhibit you from developing the property.
That is correct. Yep.
Thank you.
Other questions from council members?
Oh, I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
wondering, how long has Aspen Homes owned this property?
Part of it, I would say 5 years, and then last year I bought the little 20-acre piece right to the east.
Thank you.
That thin strip that they talked about?
Well, that was included in the bigger strip, so there's like was it 22 acres?
Yeah.
20-acre strip, and then there's like a 2-acre strip.
So you purchased the 6126 a little over 5 years ago, and then a couple years ago, you purchased the 20 and the 2.23.
Just while I'm talking, I wish we could blow that up because the pit, as you call it, it actually has a pretty serious bench before it's a pit on their property. So it's not just a drop off on that yellow line. It actually goes out a little ways and then starts sloping down.
You can tell right here, there's the top as it slopes up. That's the steeper part, and then Todd is right. It's really kind of goes right along there, and it's a couple tiers. It's not just straight line.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
May I? Okay, thank you. Donna? Donna, we're going to set your desk over there here.
Yeah, it's a nice walk though. I did want to clarify Council President Roeder's question about developing in the county. So as this property is in the exclusive tier, the first thing they'd have to do is get a zone map amendment to go from agricultural to residential, suburban, rural, residential, whatever that is. And we would, as a city, would comment because they're in the exclusive tier. The area of city impact agreements recognize that they need to develop according to our standards. And so when we respond, developing to our standards, one house on every 5 acres makes no sense in any logical world on a piece of property that's in the ACI because they're really hard to develop according to our plans. So I would be responding based on our zoning that's in the future land use map that we're proposing this to be commercial, mixed use, single family residential in my response letter to their zone map amendment. So yes, they could request that. Would it be approved? I don't know. So it's important to note that that's what we're required to do is note that. And we would also recommend that they not put houses on septic systems, but put them on sewer systems if they were to develop. So if that was an option available. Just wanted to throw that out. In addition to our conditions, they also have to meet all of the county requirements, and they have to address conditions by Lakes Highway District in relationship to roadways, which their road typicals and our road typicals are not always the same. So it gets really kind of difficult in areas that are trying to develop in the county according to our standards. So I just wanted to clarify that, just because it's not just a go develop in the county because they're in our exclusive tier.
So I'm not clear about that, if I may ask this question is, are you saying that the county would not allow them to build on 5 acres with a septic on that property?
I'm not saying that, I'm saying they may not recommend them to have approval for their zone map amendment because it's not consistent with our future land use map and our proposed zoning in that area at the moment. So they might push them back to the city again to develop
That they would have to be annexed in that. But again, I just want to go back, if they're not annexed, they can still build on 5 acre if the county approves it.
Correct.
Which anybody has to go through.
That's correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay.
Donna, when you say that we would likely recommend that they not put those homes on septic tanks, but they put it on sewer, that would not be City of Hayden sewer. It would be the applicant or the developer's sewer.
That's one of our subdivision standards, is that if sewer is available, that you need to connect to municipal sewer. Sewer is in Bent's Road, which butts up on the south side of their property. So we would be remiss to say they weren't near a sewer system to connect to a sewer system, but in order to connect to our sewer system, they would have to annex. I'm just saying it's not as easy as, that's all I'm saying. It's just not that easy.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Did you want to?
Can I add something to that? One point through meeting, as I spoke earlier when I met with your city engineer as well as Donna here is, and there's been comment, it's in your file as well, that the interim lift station right here, but this is, we are within the H6 basin boundary. So you've taken that into account of this land being able to be served by the H6 sewer system. So I didn't know if you caught that, and I didn't mention it.
No, that's good, thank you.
Yep.
So in your staff review, it noted the land uses that were around this piece of property. And it also noted that if you were to consider annexing this piece of property, that we would want to look at some additional conditions that we would want to address. So as I noted, the commercial red piece that was up here is also within the outer critical zone of the Coeur d'Alene Airport, which is one of the reasons on the future land use map it shows up as commercial. Not the only reason, but one of the reasons. So we would want a letter from the Coeur d'Alene Airport as part of their application addressing construction in this outer critical zone and their proposal to change it from commercial to single-family residential, and what the airport has to say about that.
Am I mistaken, but isn't there an issue with the airport flying over single-family homes or something like that I've seen?
That's why we would want the airport to
They would
make
have to
comment to
approve,
that.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
As this is effectively a comprehensive plan amendment, as well as a zone map request at the time of annexation, we would want to have a transportation impact analysis done to see what the impacts were of this change. We would also want a sewer technical analysis done as well, and we would want a fiscal impact analysis. In relationship to Hutter Corridor, we make really good comments about, well, is it really going to go here? Is it not really going to go here? What's the direction from KMPO and ITD? And we're suggesting that both entities, both KMPO and Idaho Transportation Department, provide comment and direction related to addressing the zone designations as they're being proposed, the development of the property, and the location of the Hutter Corridor setback areas that are being proposed. Bakel Road is in Lakes Highway District, and on the northern side of this property, on the north side of Hutter, they would be ingress and egress off of Bakel. And therefore, we would want letter and comment from Lakes Highway District on any required mitigation and/or right-of-way dedications at the time of annexation or construction requirements at the time of development. We'd want will-serve letters from whoever the water purveyor is and the sewer purveyor to truly understand what that means. Part of that may come as far as the sewer and technical analysis might lend to that conversation. And then I guess this is just maybe this is a me thing more than anything else, but if you were to annex this, you have this pocket that you've created of individuals that are really effectively receiving city services but aren't paying taxes. So their only way in and out of their properties is on city roads. They're adjacent to city properties. It makes sense for them to be city, but you don't force people to annex into the city. Never have. I guess maybe you could, but we never have, at least not as long as I've been here. But we could at least invite them to participate in the annexation so that we're doing one annexation for all of, or as many of those properties as we can, where the city would invite them to participate in the process. Then we do one public notice for those properties. Our future land use map shows all of those properties as being commercial that are in that, kind of in that pocket. So although this does show up as a land zone designation in the county as mining, it, as far as I'm aware, is not been used for mining. It is privately owned. It's being converted more to like parkland kind of, cool park area. But to answer that question as well. So those are the conditions that staff came up with. And so we were just looking for direction from the council as to whether or not you would give them kind of direction on what you would want them to provide at the time of application, if you wanted staff to reach out, or if this is a flat not interested.
Comments from council members?
Are we going to motion to give direction, or are you getting a consensus just to kind of move forward?
We need a motion and a second.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Where we're going. Yep.
Okay, all right. So I'll start if that's okay. There are two things that I'm concerned about. Number one is, as the applicant's engineer said, there's a deep pit in a mining area right next to a proposed subdivision. I don't like that. I'll just be real clear. I'm not in favor of, we're tasked with the health, safety, and welfare of our city. And to me, that's not a good fit. The other thing is my position on annexation, more property in the city of Hayden, we have a difficult time taking care of what we have. Road-wise, sewer-wise, our levy rate does not give us the funding, even though there's a thought that with annexation, the city gets all this extra money, but also gets a burden to go backwards on residential development. The impact fees are very low, in my opinion, for transportation or circulation. They're not nearly high enough, so we're not able to fix our roads. So because of the low levy rate and the low circulation impact fees, I'm not in favor of annexing more property.
Councilmember DePriest.
Excuse me. I have pretty much a lot of the same concerns as Council President Roeder just expressed. I look across the highway and I see projected 1,500 dwellings in Hayden Canyon already, and the traffic that will eventually come out of there. We have development going on the west side of town, starting to fill in and the like. And I think we need to build more of what we have already and see how it's affecting the community-wide transportation and infrastructure and services before we go ahead and say, okay, let's add more projected future development. If, how should I word this maybe? It sounded like, if I understood, if, I'm not against you looking into it and doing everything, but you would have to come back with some pretty convincing data for me to go, oh, okay. But like I said, my primary concern is, what I would like to see is, I'd like to see more of what we already have within the city limits and the development that is already basically in the pipeline developed. So we have a much better idea of the cumulative community-wide effect.
Councilmember White.
Yes, my thinking is along the same lines. I feel like we have a lot of things in the works, a lot of commitments made already to annex this property into the city. I feel is a commitment that we're not ready to make right now. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Certainly.
Okay. Completely respect all three of your comments, and I get it, I understand. If I may ask that if it doesn't fit right now, can we, as we move forward to the county, because my plan would like to exercise the private property right, look at doing something there. So with that said, I don't know if legal can chime in on this or not, but if it is, you're not interested in it, and it is, it's a difficult piece because of this Hutter alignment. There's a lot of difficulties here. We would like to move forward, but the ACI, and being an exclusive tier, the ACI is problematic. As Donna just stated, so that we will, if we try to move forward with the change into the zone map and the zone change application at the county, then her comments are going to be such. So then it's going to be, well, if the city doesn't want to grow that way, and I understand, you got a lot of capacity in Hayden Canyon and other areas of your city. Well, then it's not fair to us to have to develop per city standards. So if I would ask that if we're not going to get considered for annexing in, can you allow us to move forward in the county without having to meet the requirements of the city's densities, the city standards? Because I don't think it's fair.
That's not a question to be answered tonight, but it's certainly one for us to consider and probably provide more analysis on.
Thank you. I just want to be on record stating that, so thank you,
Understand.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And it's an appropriate question.
At this point, I think we probably want a motion. Do we want a motion
Yes, it's an action item.
to address the situation?
I'll do it.
Council President Roeder.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that and I want to get this, R. Reclet Properties, did I get that right? LLC request for annexation. My motion is that we deny the annexation.
We have a second?
Deny the request to move forward with the annexation process.
Okay,
Deny the request to move forward. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember DePreez?
Yes.
Council President Roeder?
yes.
Motion passes. Thank you for coming tonight, gentlemen. Our next item, 4D. The minor subdivision, pardon me, the minor change to conditions of approval of PZE 20-0102 Stone Creek North subdivision. Can you give us some information, please?
I can. So this is a staff request. I want to say that first and foremost. I don't know if that came through in the memo, but it's a staff request. It was identified kind of as we were viewing the land that is to be dedicated for the park area, that part of the conditions that we were kind of working under had changed from the time that it was approved under preliminary plat to today. And then in conversation with Councilmember White, over questions about this, I went back and did some research, mostly just to give some background. So Stone Creek North as a subdivision was approved in November of 2020. And we really were looking at these two subdivisions, Stone Creek North and Marks Ranch directly north, simultaneously together. They did their transportation impact analysis kind of together, and they kind of were working together. And then for a variety of reasons, they decided they weren't working together anymore. So, but effectively, Stone Creek North came forward in a public hearing with Planning and Zoning Commission, and it was identified in the public hearing at Planning and Zoning. We received public comments from only one entity, one commenter that was west of the project site, and her comments were really about the fact that she liked wildlife and beauty and would like to keep the area nice and clean. And in the city council minutes of the public hearings, the statement was made that the bike path along the west side of the subject site is planned for connectivity from the Marks Annexation Trail System to the new park in Stone Creek North. Well, then subsequent to that, when Marks Ranch went to public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and it subsequently received approval in 2021. Notice it's just kind of a little lagging behind Stone Creek. It was noted that the multimodal pathway connectivity from Stone Creek North throughout the subdivision to Lancaster and beyond is required. And improvements to Lancaster Knob area to include those identified in the annexation agreement, which could include a parking area and trailhead signage and sledding park and ADA path to the gazebo and unpaved trails. Prior to the meeting, public comments were received by the neighbors to the west. So more of those neighbors in the estate subdivision came to that meeting, or commented beforehand and came to the meeting. And they noted that the proposed trail location on the hill on the west side of Marks and the west side of Stone Creek was of concern. And the comments that were received,
Stone Creek North.
Stone Creek North Trail was supposed to butt up to the Marks Ranch Trail. Okay. And this, at the Mark Ranch, it was noted that, and became part of the record, that identified concerns related to the location of this trail, safety, health, future maintenance issues. And as a result, Mr. Olson, who was the engineer of record for Marks, identified that the trail system didn't have to be located here, and that the applicant agreed with many of the comments received in the letters provided. Then during the public comment of that public hearing, those that presented that lived on that west boundary identified that there was a concern about the trail so close to their backyards and the state of who uses that area, trash, fires, drugs, alcohol, etc. And so as a result, the conditions changed for Marks related to this kind of continuation of parkland on the west side, that identified that the special use park is as defined in their annexation agreement should be constructed as part of the subdivision, and that it talks about the location of that special park, that community park around the Knob area and up along Lancaster. And then it notes in condition 15 that the trail shall be removed from the proposed location to a more suitable location as determined by the city staff in review of the subdivision plans to ensure that that trail meets the intent of the annexation agreement. So as a result, because that whole trail got moved off of that western boundary, the connectivity that was kind of proposed in Stone Creek didn't work anymore for a park.
In Stone Creek North.
In Stone Creek North, correct. So this is the Stone Creek North. After we've kind of worked on the roadway realignment and we've pushed things around. So we have some park, and I left the topo on here so you could see the grade that we're talking about. It's effectively a park between homes along this side and a little bit of parkland over here, which is totally meets the intent of the annexation agreement for parkland. They're still required to do all of parkland construction, trails and benches and a community gathering location in a part of it. But truly, that's not a landscape turf area. It's a relatively native area that would still have a trail system. The transportation plan and parks plan for that connecting trail system is still being met through the trail that goes up this side of the road and then connects to trails that are in marks that would get you to the knob, which was part of the intent. But the whole the whole pretense of making the city owner of this parkland was that it was going to be a continuation of parkland in Marks, but it's not. Marks Parkland is on the north end of Marks with an interconnecting trail that's still required. And staff just can't, and Rob and Alan and I, we're all looking at each other going, why do we want to maintain this? And so we kind of went back to the developer and said, I think it makes more sense for you guys to maintain this. Similar to what Stone Creek subdivision currently does, that's privately owned, and they maintain it. We just couldn't figure it out. The reason that it's here tonight before you as a public meeting is because it's not a change in any condition to what they have to build. Everything they have to build is the same. The only change is the ownership of the park going from being dedicated to the city to being dedicated to the HOA, and we can take our operation and maintenance budget and apply it to the parks that are, turf grass and need water and cutting grass, and, we can apply those dollars to that, and they can take care of this kind of strip between property owners. So that's the reason for the request. Yes.
Maybe I missed it, but the Marks property park area to the north, do we maintain that?
It is proposed to be a public park because a piece of that property, which is what we call the knob collectively, just south of Lancaster between the bike path and Lancaster Road, is currently owned by Lakes Highway District, and they are willing to transition that ownership to the city. And so because we would own that piece, the rest of the land that's being dedicated as a requirement of the Marks annexation would also be dedicated to the city for continuity of maintenance.
And the plan here was to connect those two.
Right, which didn't work after we took the requirement out of the Marks property.
Do you know roughly what the acreage or size of the Marks property is that we're going to be maintaining?
Not off the top of my head.
Rough?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay, large, small?
Well, it's over 5 acres. It's more than 5 acres.
No, because it's the highway district property would go straight to the city.
Yeah.
It never goes to.
Right, so I couldn't tell you, but it is in their annexation agreement, and it's
That the city would maintain it?
correct.
All right.
But they have to build a portion of it as well.
Right.
Yeah. This piece of property here and across the road here does not include the roadway at all. This area and this area is a little over 5 acres. And the HOA also has to maintain all the other tract spaces that are tracked within the Stone Creek North subdivision as well. So it's just another tract as far as.
Am I reading that map correctly? That looks pretty steep. Is that what those are, gradations
Yes,
there?
it is.
Yeah.
Which
So
is another.
How much maintenance really is there to it?
Well, there is,
Native, steepness, probably rock. Yeah.
but still, there is maintenance.
If I could,
And Alan could attest to this.
in the open areas we have that are native like that, and we have some, we get a lot of complaints to come and deal with just trees that have branches, take trees down, nuisances, fire hazards. So it becomes from my standpoint, that's a very steep hillside. It's native terrain. There isn't really a maintenance program that works like from a weekly standpoint.
Not a regular.
It's more of a nuisance maintenance. So we get a call, we go out and we spend $20,000 taking down trees.
Right.
to leave me in maintenance, and then we walk away until we get the next call. There's not, I don't, just also from my standpoint and looking at it, I don't see it as a big draw from the community as wanting to go on the steep hillside. I think it, from a local standpoint, yeah, but I don't see it as a huge, this is a big community draw. People are going to want to go from all over parts of the city to it, like they do to Honeysuckle Beach or Fanouken or some of our other more community parks.
Is there liability there too? Somebody on that property climbs up, falls down the rocks or something like that?
There's always liability.
Yeah, I know, that's just it. Anytime we can reduce liability, to me, that's a plus also.
Council President Roder. Thank you, Mayor. I want to go back to, I want to make sure that there was a requirement that X amount of land be devoted to parks that the city would own as part of the agreement.
So the annexation agreement specifically says owner agrees to dedicate a minimum of 11.7% of the gross land area of the subject property as parkland as a condition of any development of the land. So with the existing Stone Creek Park in Stone Creek subdivision and the 5.05 acres that are here, they've met that 11.7% requirement.
Okay, so my question then is, that is not really good parkland property. So, they dedicated land that is not that useful. Did we have any say on that, or could they just say, that's what you get and that's it?
No, we had addressed this park as being a specialty park because not all parks are flat. They're not all sports complexes. And some folks do like to hike around on trails that are on hills. So that was identified throughout the whole staff review for Stone Creek North and Marks Ranch. So it was identified as a specialty park on a hilly terrain with native trails.
Okay, and one of the things I've heard about Stone Creek North with their private park, there's a concern that the general public can't use it because it is privately owned. Will this be the same? How will that work, I guess? Is it, can the HOA say, hey, nobody other than residents of Stone Creek North can use the park?
Yeah, so yeah, they could. The way that Stone Creek, in the Stone Creek subdivision, park in the Stone Creek subdivision to the south, they actually received park impact fee credits for allowing public to access their park. So it's a privately owned park with a public ingress egress over that park, and they receive park impact fee credits to allow for that. But the condition doesn't require the park to be public or private. It just requires it to be parkland, open space parkland.
So just so that I understand, the general public will be able to use either one of those parcels if the HOA owns the property.
No, that's not what I said. The HOA owns the property in Stone Creek, and because they made an agreement with the city, received park impact fees, and gave a public ingress egress to use the park, public can use the park in Stone Creek. If the HOA chooses in Stone Creek North not to, because they're not getting park impact fee credits at all, then they could choose for this to be private only for their residents.
So in other words, we're giving land, the city's giving land to that HOA in theory, and they can say, public's not welcomed. That just doesn't seem right. So now the other question I have would be, is the HOA willing to do this?
We talked to the owners last week before we came to the meeting tonight, asked them that question, and they are.
And they're willing to maintain it? And do they know that they can have full control of, well, will they open it up to the public? I guess is my question.
Wasn't a question that was asked.
Do we as a city have an opportunity, if we decide to turn this over to them, to make to make public access on that parkland a condition of giving it to them?
First of all, let's be really clear for the record. We're not giving anything yet because nothing's been deeded to the city.
Not ours.
It's not ours. It's not ours right now. So this is just a clarification of a
Okay.
condition based on a
Okay.
change. So,
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
right.
Uh,
Those are all great questions. I just want to make sure the record's really clear that this property
That's a
is
good
not
point.
our property.
In the event,
Right now.
I'll rephrase that. In the event that the city does not obtain this property and it stays in Stone Creek's possession, do we have an opportunity to require or insist on public use of that land?
There's been no discussion or conversation of that. There's been no impact fee credits. There's been,
In fact, it was specifically stated they wouldn't receive impact
Right.
credits.
So maybe another question.
Yes, sir.
So since nothing has transferred in ownership, can we request from the subdivision that we want a different land that's more park-like?
The preliminary plat was approved based on the parkland location that is in general where it is located today. So that's the way the preliminary plat was approved at the time of its approval by a previous council in 2021.
Can we ask, though, to amend that so that we do have more usable park that the public could have access to?
we could not ask them to amend their preliminary plat right now based on that. I mean, your decision tonight is just have the land dedicated to the city or not. That's the decision point in front of you.
I know, but that question leads to others, and that's, I guess, where we're going. And I just wanted to have an idea where we could go with this. I'm not sure.
Councilmember White, thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple different questions. So, now I read somewhere that when property is dedicated to the city, that it's deeded at the time of annexation.
Totally different set of circumstances.
Okay. All right. So, I'm just concerned that, I know this is a minor change in wording, but for me, it's a major change in contract and property ownership. And I just really feel like promises should be kept and not set a precedent for, annexation agreements.
Nothing about the annexation agreement is changing here tonight.
Okay. So could you go back to the map showing where the park is and show me where the access to the park is? How can the public get to it?
Again, it's not, that's part of the question here.
Okay.
So there are areas along this public road that you can get to the park. There's a pathway along here that you can get to the park. There's a pathway along here that you can get back into the park as it's kind of designed at the moment. So there are locations along all of the sidewalks that lead to the pathways that get to the park area.
So if we were to turn this back over to the HOA, then would they gate those off?
I don't know. That hasn't even been, I don't think even been thought about yet.
Okay. So, I was just concerned too that this decision was made, this annexation agreement was made. Well, I guess we're just asking you questions right now. Is that what we're doing? Just asking
Go
Donna
ahead,
questions?
comments and discussion.
Okay. Well, I'm concerned that annexation agreement was made in a public hearing. And I know that this is a public meeting right now, but the public isn't given an opportunity to talk. And I think that there are a lot of neighbors in that area who would like to have input as to what's going on in their neighborhood. And I would like to see this postponed to another meeting and give people who live in the area, in the Stone Creek areas, opportunities to speak and say what they think about their parks.
Would you ask that as a hearing or as an opportunity for public comment? How would you propose to do that?
Well, maybe as a hearing, because it came about in a hearing.
Okay, all right.
And it would give people opportunities to get notice of it and make impact.
Okay.
The other option, Donna, is you can just withdraw the request based on the commentary tonight if you wish.
Yes. Mr. Mayor. Yes, sir, Mr. Priest.
I keep hearing annexation, and does the annexation agreement or whatever happened for this property have anything to do with this issue tonight? So there is no, yeah,
The property is developed, is going to develop as parkland.
right.
Not any of the other conditions at all are changing, are requested to change, just the ownership of the park after it's completely
The
constructed.
ownership and maintenance of the park.
But the park was given in an annexation agreement.
It was not. It was not.
It was not?
It was
Yeah,
not.
that's my, I mean, that's what I was asking, it was not given as part, so
It was
that,
required to be property 11.7% of the gross area of the area that was annexed was required to be utilized as parkland. And that condition is being met.
it's just a matter of who maintains, for the most part, maintains that 11.7%.
Right.
So the whatever that,
And for all of the good reasons that Alan rattled off here.
yeah,
You know, whether it's safety issues, whether it's maintenance issues, whether it's, you know, removal of fallen trees, whether it's fire issues, whether it's trash removal, pick those things, all of those kinds of things on this particular area didn't seem to make a ton of sense to staff. And that's why staff is requesting this change.
Councilmember White.
Yeah, I'm looking at the city council meeting minutes from October 27th, 2020. And under Parks and Open Space, on page 4, it says, "Park dedication per annexation agreement was for 5.5 acres in total to be dedicated to the public. Subdivision Code 1261, et cetera, requires the dedication of 10% of the gross area of land to be dedicated."
Right, and it says that the annexation agreement trumps that in that same paragraph, or farther down in that paragraph, and that they would have to abide by the annexation agreement, not the then existent subdivision code at that point in time. The subdivision code at that point in time required a different requirement, which we didn't follow. We followed the annexation because it trumped per our legal counsel. And that's what that paragraph says. That is absolutely correct.
Mr. Mayor, could we postpone this and just give the public opportunities to write to us and let us know what they think? And just come back to it, not make it a public hearing, but just get input from people and come back and address this at a later date?
That is certainly an option.
Mayor, I have
Just make it
another,
a public hearing if that's what you're going to do.
I'm sorry.
Just have it be a formal public hearing if
Okay.
that's what you're going to do.
Okay.
just, could you go back to the topo map with the contour lines, please? My question is this, is that I understand there's a stormwater mitigation issue with the development. And my question is, if the city owns this parkland, is the developer allowed to use somehow that city-owned property to help mitigate the stormwater? Whereas if the homeowners association owns it, is the developer allowed to use that property for water mitigation or stormwater control?
It's kind of on the upper end of the stormwater
Right.
zone, so it doesn't provide much of an opportunity. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know how much is there. I can see that it's,
well, there's a lot there, but their development's all below it. So their stormwater mitigation starts below that and continues on. It's hard to flow the water up to the top and start over.
yeah, I'm not saying up to the top. I'm just asking the question whether the city ownership would exclude them from utilizing it anyway for water
Probably
mitigation.
not in this situation. Because there's no, we would not allow stuff off of private property to be probably treated onto public property without some kind of agreement. But the only way to get the private property water there would be to pump it to the top and let it flow through. Probably not a very effective methodology.
I can see practicality, but I'm just asking whether or not if the HOA owned the property, could they use that for water mitigation?
Either way, they could either with an agreement with the city or internally.
Okay, that's all I want to know.
Other comments, questions? Councilmember White, would you like to make propose a motion?
I would like to motion that, let's see if I can find it here. That the PZE 201012 Stone Creek North Subdivision minor change approval be sent out as a public notice, so the public can comment on it. I don't know how to word this.
So would you then make a motion that we delay making a decision on this
Yes.
until the city can hold a public hearing to solicit public comment and follow a decision after that?
I worded that nicely. Thank you.
I got lucky. Okay. And maybe our attorney will say I didn't. Did I phrase that properly? Okay. That's the motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please, Abby.
Councilmember DePriest,
Sure.
Council President Roder,
Yes.
and Councilmember White.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. We're down to our reports from Mr. Boyer, City Administrator.
Just real quick, we did have a large city event since our last meeting. We had Hayden Lights. Susie's here, and you guys participated in that as well. I understand the mayor got to give a nice speech and light the Christmas tree, and we had Grinch and all that. So it sounded like it was a fun time. And anyways, all the staff again steps up and helps in parks and streets and in recreation. So again, those are the fun events. There were some issues with, we had the European market, which was successful and was crowded, which is a good thing, but there were some parking issues that we're going to have to work on and resolve. And so I think that was a partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, and they're going to do a recap meeting, and I think there'll be some changes going forward. Hopefully both will, well, obviously Hayden Lights will continue on, but, and I think they will as well. We need to make some modifications to address some of the parking issues. So tomorrow we had a meeting, we were going to have a workshop on the survey information, and we have one council member that's sick and one council member that can't be there, so we really have a quorum issue, and so we're going to have to put that off. We could reschedule next week if there were a time, if you guys want to talk about a day that maybe works for everybody. I can set that up. So
Would council be available not tomorrow, but next Wednesday for the presentation on the opinion survey
I'm not available at that time.
on Wednesday?
I'm okay on the 21st.
consultant.
What time are we thinking about, maybe?
Mid-afternoon?
Same time, 2:00. We can change it to whatever works for you.
I don't have my calendar in front of me right now.
Okay. Do you know if you won't be available on Tuesday?
We talking Tuesday or Wednesday?
I'm sorry. You're right, Wednesday. You won't be available on Wednesday?
I don't have my calendar in front of me.
Can I
Make it tentative. Certainly.
Can I make the suggestion maybe, since this is a very busy time, we're coming up on the next couple weeks. We've already postponed this once or twice now already. Do you think there'd be any problem with the presenter just moving it in January?
No, I think he'd be fine in January.
Because it looks
I just was trying to keep it moving.
Yeah.
And I think he's probably available
Yeah, that's a good
next
idea.
week.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking, the next 2 to 3 weeks are usually pretty hectic and things come up and what have you. And it is important. I do think we need to address it, but I don't think it's something that can't wait until, the second, third week of January, that type of thing.
Just as a counter argument, I've heard you speak of the difficulty in getting anything moving, given the
Yep.
laws and regulations we have. And if we're going to have a hope of trying to take another look at the plan and components of it, I would only suggest to you that trying to get this done sooner than later is going to be a better idea. But
No, you're,
council,
no, you're right. I mean, I think I'm the one who pushed this forward, and I've brought it up a couple times and do want to get it moving. I mean, I could tentatively do it, but I mean, we have tended so far now twice. We have put this on, and for various reasons, we've postponed it. And we can set it again, and if it gets, part of it is, the presenter, we give him a call next week and say, hey, guess what?
Yeah, he's been pretty open
Yeah,
to days. I don't have a date next week, but I think he'd be available because he's going to do it online. And if we have at least 3, we could do it.
do it Tuesday.
And we could record it. The person that's not here too, I guess.
I'm fine with scheduling it under the possibility that being that time of year, things are happening and, will we not have a quorum again, type of thing. So however, whatever the rest of the council wants to do, I'm fine with it.
Would this be considered a special meeting and be recorded?
Well, workshops are special meetings, but we usually, we designate workshops because they're different from just a regular, like special meeting. And that, like, we'll sit around a table, and so we try to do it differently. If we're going to have to do some kind of online, because he's gone, I think we can record that. It's not something that I think we would put out, but we probably could record it. And if there was a council member that couldn't make it, we could probably do it that way, just to get moving forward.
So I'll make a proposal, we go to the 21st like originally and try to make that happen if that's workable with everybody, or at least see if that's workable. 2:00, Wednesday, the 21st.
Okay, I'll verify and we'll send it out, yeah.
Great.
Okay,
Wednesday, the 21st.
that's right.
Okay?
Thank you. Anyway, so we've been tracking the items that you've been bringing forward. I thought we were gonna, we had the Ramsey Road one. I was getting ready to check that off, and we'll come back with the rest of that. We're trying to work through those items that you guys have requested to come back as we can on these agendas. So we are tracking those, and if we're missing something, let me know. So anyways, with that, everybody, thank you and have great holidays. Merry Christmas.
Council members?
No, you're gonna have to get away with it, but I'll go last.
Okay.
All right. I guess first of all, and it came up tonight, and I put on my list here to keep pushing on it, is next year, we talked about already, consider looking into the traffic impact analysis process, triggers and the like, and it sounds like that's and that's fine down the road. And a comment again and again, this is the only time we really get to talk about stuff here without risking open meeting issues, I guess. So I need to address something that has kind of blown up in the last 36 hours, not even that. Most people know by now that John Young resigned from HURA yesterday. Didn't take long for it to hit social media, and that's fine. I mean, and the like, but I think there needs to be a factual education outreach about exactly what HURA does, and it's not easy because it is a very complicated issue. But there is a sentiment, understandably. People have their rights and to think how they will and all that. But again, please understand the facts. I I sense that the HURA district may come up for termination, whatever it is, suspension. I don't know what to call it now, the way things are going in this community with so many issues. But I'm looking at the CIP here, and through 2027, HURA is already committed to $3,270,000 worth of participation in government way miles intersection improvement, corridor study, business district, Honeysuckle Government Way Dakota, Honeysuckle Government Way intersection, Honeysuckle Force main phase, Government Dakota, Honeysuckle Force main phase 2, Government Way Dakota, H6. We're trying to get them to participate, hopefully find a way here at Honeysuckle and Government Way. And people don't seem to understand that if that $3,270,000 disappears, how's it going to be replaced? How are those projects going to get done? It's going to come from bonds or raising taxes, or we're going to have roads that continue to deteriorate, decay, and cause more problems. I understand many in the community who don't like HURA, who don't trust HURA, who don't feel that it's a benefit to the city, and that's fine. But I think people need to really start understanding the ramifications of what may happen, because already what I saw on social media today, and the things I'm seeing in other areas in this community, oftentimes you get what you ask for, I guess, and it's a concern. So I'd like us to down the road look at putting together a truly factual and detailed educational process regarding pros and cons, benefits or whatever of her, because I'm concerned we lose that type of money, that this city could face significant problems. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, and Merry Christmas to everybody. Okay. Staff, everybody. I didn't want to forget that. We probably won't see each other, but first year basically almost completed here. It's been a learning experience and an understanding of what you people actually do, and the dedication and commitment and hard work and time that you guys put in is really something I didn't understand, but do certainly appreciate. And thank you and happy holidays.
Ladies and gentlemen, are there any other comments or? Yes,
Yes.
Councilmember White, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I was also going to comment on the urban renewal situation. And I don't totally agree with you, Councilman.
That's fine.
Yeah, DePriest. I was just thinking this is a good time for us to take a good look at HURA, and rather than, just jumping in really quick and selecting a new director or expanding the district, as was suggested yesterday. A lot of the projects that they want to do, like certain intersections, are contingent upon them gaining more property in the urban renewal district. Some of the intersections along Government Way cannot be accomplished without more of the district expanding. And I was reading the Hayden Urban Renewal Capital Development Plan, that is ordinance number 406, adopted December 13th, and today's December 13th, 2005. And it says, this plan shall terminate no later than December 31st, 2029, except for revenues which may be received in 2030, either on January 1st, 2030, or if the agency determines an earlier terminate date. And then it also goes on to say that upon termination of the revenue allocation authority of the urban renewal plan, to the extent the agency owns or possesses any assets, the agency shall dispose of any remaining assets by granting or conveying or dedicating such assets to the city of Hayden. So I was just thinking, let's just look at this circumspectly and just think about the implications and see what our legal options are. And yes, the Urban Renewal District has provided us some nice roads and have done some improvements, and they had some goals to do more improvements. But they're also at a crossroads where they were going to have to acquire more property, and they were going to have to now get a new director and things like that. So I just say, let's stop and take a look at it.
Just as a point of clarification, the Urban Renewal District elects their own board chairman. There is no,
Sure.
Okay, although they are I see what you mean. They are hiring an executive director.
Right, but what I meant was, if they choose, they have a new member that they need to add now, and that does go through the city council. I'm just saying that it's a good chance to, it's a time to stop and look at it.
Another point of clarification, when they do dissolve, it's my understanding, and someone please correct me if I've understanding this incorrectly. City doesn't get all of what they've got left in there. It gets distributed out to all of the taxing agencies that are involved. If there's 10 million left in there and they dissolve, the city doesn't get 10 million. They get a very small, I believe, the number I keep hearing is 12%.
12.5%.
12.5%.
Right.
Of whatever it is. So to say that if there's this large sum of, or these assets in there and say the city, that's not correct. There's 10, 12, I don't know how many taxing districts that will share in all of that.
Right.
So the city will only get 12.7 or whatever it is percent. And that's part of what is important for the people to understand. Because again, as I said, what fired me is I was amazed at how fast it hit various social media sites and the comments on it and the information that's being put out to so many people who don't have any, they go, oh, what? The whole city's, they don't understand the real facts. And it is extremely important to make a rational decision about, as you say, the crossroads and how and what's going to continue here, that true facts be disseminated to everybody.
Okay, I'm going to call a halt to the HURA discussion here because we have more business to go through tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an executive session here next. We are calling an executive session for the reason of Idaho Code 74-2061C to acquire an interest in real property which is not owned by a public agency. I'd like to thank all of you for showing up tonight, but our executive session is a closed-door session. So thank you very much.
Well,
I would appreciate a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session for,
And a roll call vote, please.
and I have to take a 5-minute second, real quick.
And we're going to need a break too.
And roll call vote, please.
Did I hear a second?
Yes.
Councilmember
Councilmember
DePreez.
DePreez.
Yes.
Yes.
Councilmember White? Yes. Councilmember DePreez?
Yes.
And Councilmember Roder?
And
Thanks
maybe
for
have a
coming tonight, folks,
recess.
and sticking it out.
Maybe have a